Chapter 769. Lin Chao's face was filled with shock. Yi Xing's speed had exceeded Lin Chao's expectations. He had never expected that Yi Xing would be able to dodge his spear at such a short distance and counterattack so quickly. Yi Xing's finger was like an arrow. It was too fast, and Lin Chao had no time to block it. He could only roar as the astral energy in his body exploded. Whoosh! A ball of energy, with Lin Chao's body as the center, instantly spread out in all directions. A visible shockwave spread out in all directions, creating a shockwave. As a 3-star king, the energy produced by Lin Chao's astral energy was extremely terrifying. Any 2-star martial artist would not be able to get close to him at this moment. They would be blown away by this energy. However, the power of Yi Xing's finger attack was not only at the 2-star king level, but it also had a terrifying penetrative power. It could penetrate through everything and was unstoppable. The energy attack was penetrated by the astral energy like an arrow and instantly shattered. The astral energy arrow was unstoppable. It shot forward and shattered the energy attack layer by layer. Finally, it hit Lin Chao's back. Although the energy attack from the astral energy was penetrated, it still weakened the astral energy arrow by a lot. Lin Chao had a high-grade mystic-grade inner armor on his body. Although the astral energy arrow's penetrative power was terrifying, it could not penetrate the high-grade mystic-grade inner armor. This attack only pushed Lin Chao a few steps forward. It was not a big deal. However, Lin Chao was almost knocked to the ground by Yi Xing's finger in front of everyone's eyes. He almost fell flat on his face, which made him extremely furious. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. Yi Xing attacked with another finger attack. The astral energy contained arrow intent. Once Yi Xing attacked, it was like an arrow. Its speed was extremely fast and sharp. At this moment, Lin Chao had already retracted his black treasured spear. He instantly swept it and attacked behind him. Although Lin Chao's speed was not as fast as Yi Xing's, the speed of his attack in a small area was as fast as teleportation. The black treasured spear instantly hit the astral energy arrow. Boom! With a loud explosion, the astral energy arrow was shattered by the spear. Lin Chao also felt an attack coming from the black treasured spear. His arm shook, and he could not help but take a step back. What a powerful force! Lin Chao's heart trembled. The power of this astral finger arrow was actually not much inferior to the power of his spear. However, Yi Xing's astral finger attack was clearly much more flexible than his spear attack. No matter how one became one with the spear, it was impossible to change the length of the spear. How could a spear be as flexible as fingers? The difference in attack power was not big, but the difference in agility was huge. Lin Chao was shocked. He instantly determined that he was not his opponent. Yi Xing didn't give him any time to think. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xing's body shifted and appeared in another location as if he had teleported. His finger shot out like an arrow and attacked Lin Chao. It took a long time to describe, but in an instant, an astral finger arrow shot out. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Yi Xing's movement and attack speed were both extremely fast. Within a breath he had already shot out several astral finger arrows, attacking Lin Chao from different directions. Lin Chao waved his black treasured spear like a dancing dragon. His spear skills were displayed to the extreme, and it was almost impossible for anything to pass through. However, under the attack of the astral finger arrows, he still couldn't keep up with the rhythm. Such a fast attack only lasted for 3 breaths of time. Lin Chao was starting to lose his strength, and he was starting to panic. Stop! Lin Chao saw that he couldn't hold on any longer, and he hurriedly shouted, "Let's talk nicely." Now you want to talk things over nicely? It was too late. Yi Xing's speed did not slow down at all. The astral finger arrows were endless, and they were as fast as lightning. The kings present could only see a series of afterimages. They couldn't even see Yi Xing's attack clearly. Lin Chao was the strongest 2-star king present, but he could barely see Yi Xing's attack. In his panic, he quickly showed signs of defeat. Whoosh! A astral finger arrow brushed past the black treasured spear and shot into Lin Chao's wrist. The wrist was the joint between the glove and the inner armor. There was a gap that could be found, and it was the weakest point of the defense. The astral finger arrow was blocked, But the terrifying penetrating power found a gap and entered Lin Chao's wrist. A sharp pain came, and Lin Chao cried out in pain. The black treasured spear flew out of his hand. Whoosh! Yi Xing's figure was like an arrow. He instantly appeared in front of Lin Chao and grabbed out. Yi Xing's palm was as fast as an arrow. Lin Chao instinctively wanted to dodge, but it was too late. His injured wrist was caught by Yi Xing. The astral finger that contained the arrow intent shot out from Lin Chao's palm. It was like a small arrow, and it attacked Lin Chao's wrist through the gap. The astral arrow intent penetrated Lin Chao's body like an arrow. Everywhere it passed, his blood and meridians were damaged. It first rushed from his wrist to his arm, and then from his arm to his body. The sharp pain that came from his meridians and bone marrow caused Lin Chao to cry out in pain. The disciples of Starcloud Continent were all shocked. They didn't expect Lin Chao to be defeated so quickly and so miserably. Stop! Lu Fangyan shouted. Yi Xing, don't be too presumptuous. You have gone too far today. When my brother comes back, you will have to bear the consequences. The astral energy in Lin Chao's body, under the attack of Yi Xing's astral arrow intent, was completely defeated. The intense pain made him kneel on the ground, losing the strength to fight back. Yi Xing grabbed Lin Chao's wrist and looked at Lu Fangyan, saying, Presumptuous? Too much. I want to be presumptuous today. I want to go too far. If you don't like it, go find Lu Li. With that, Yi Xing stepped out and kicked Lin Chao away. He continued. Lu Fangyan, you still have the face to speak? Do you think I can leave you out today? Lu Fangyan's face changed. He was like a cat with its hair standing on end. He shouted. What do you want to do? Whoosh! As soon as Lu Fangyan finished speaking, Yi Xing had already appeared in front of him. He stretched out his two palms and grabbed at Lu Fangyan. Lu Fangyan's face changed. Even Lin Chao, a 3-star king, was not a match for Yi Xing. He was only a 2-star king. Naturally, his strength was far from Yi Xing's. In an instant, Lu Fangyan used his astrology. At the same time, he took out an upper-grade Xian weapon and retreated quickly. In terms of speed, how could Lu Fangyan compare to Yi Xing? Even though Lu Fangyan had used all his strength to retreat, Yi Xing's hands still grabbed at him quickly. He was getting closer to Lu Fangyan's body quickly. Whoosh! In a hurry, Lu Fangyan swung his sword and chopped at Yi Xing's wrists. Yi Xing pressed down with his right hand. His 5 fingers formed a claw and grabbed at the sword. Clang! With a crisp sound, the upper-grade Xian weapon shook violently and almost flew out of Lu Fangyan's hand. Yi Xing's left hand continued to move forward and grabbed Lu Fangyan's neck. Astral arrow intent shot out. Chapter 770. The astral arrow intent was like tiny arrows, extremely sharp as they collided within Lu Fangyan's body. Even Lin Chao, a 3-star king, could not block the attack of the astral arrow intent. Lu Fangyan was naturally inferior. Under the attack of the astral arrow intent, the astral energy within Lu Fangyan's body was utterly destroyed. Without the protection of the astral energy, Lu Fangyan's flesh and blood were instantly pierced by the astral arrow intent, causing him to be severely injured. Puff! Lu Fangyan spat out a large mouthful of blood. Yi Xing was standing in front of Lu Fangyan. When the blood that Lu Fangyan spat out was still an inch away from Yi Xing's body, it was blocked by an invisible force and shot away. Yi Xing did not even touch a single drop. With the tyrannical power of the astral arrow intent, Yi Xing could completely destroy Lu Fangyan's flesh and blood, killing him completely. However, when disciples fought, it was fine to be injured, but it would be troublesome if someone died. When Lu Fangyan spat out blood, Yi Xing swung his hand and flung Lu Fangyan away like a dead dog. Thud 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 thud. The disciples of Starcloud Continent retreated one after another, looking at Yi Xing with eyes full of fear and dread. Even the 3-star king Lin Chao was defeated by Yi Xing. Among the disciples of Starcloud Continent, besides Lu Li who was ranked first, no one else was a match for Yi Xing. However, Lu Li had already entered Enlightenment Peak. In the first year, new disciples only had one chance to enter Enlightenment Peak. Once they entered, they would not easily come out. Therefore, currently, no one in Starcloud Continent could compete with Yi Xing. With such a big matter happening, someone naturally sent a message to Lu Li. Soon, Yixing received a message from a stranger in his communication bead. The message came from number 7131, and the content was, "You dare to hurt my disciples of Starcloud Continent. I, Luli, will pay you back tenfold in the future." The person who sent the message was Luli, the strongest disciple of Starcloud Continent. He was ranked first among the disciples of the 10th peak. Yixing replied to number 7131, "Bring it on." Somewhere in Enlightenment Mountain, Luli in his red robe looked gloomy. He looked at the message sent by Yixing and snorted in anger. "Yixing, you will regret this." Luli sent another message to Yixing, and then cut off the communication bead. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes and continued to meditate. There was only one chance to enter the Enlightenment Mountain every year. Luli would not leave since he had not reached enlightenment yet. What was more, he was clear about his priorities. In the Enlightenment Mountain, the most important thing was to calm his mind and focus on learning martial arts. In the number 72 mansion, Yixing read the message from Luli and smiled. Clearly, Luli would not come out from the Enlightenment Mountain anytime soon. What was more, Yixing was full of confidence. Even if he had to fight Luli face to face, he was not afraid at all. He was not afraid of Luli coming back. Yixing's gaze swept across the disciples of the Starcloud Continent and said, "Today's matter ends here. Remember this lesson in your hearts. If you dare to make things difficult for the disciples of the Starcloud Continent in the future, it will not be as simple as today." As soon as he finished speaking, Yixing led Zhao Yinling and the others away. Number 71 mansion was adjacent to the mansion where the disciples of Starcloud Continent lived. Basically, only the disciples of Starcloud Continent bullied them. Now Yixing had solved the problem of the disciples of Starcloud Continent. As long as Luli did not come back from Enlightenment Mountain, the disciples of Starcloud Continent would not dare to act rashly in front of the disciples of Starcloud Continent. Now that Yixing had nothing to worry about, he naturally went to the cultivation tower to cultivate. He was only at the 9th level of astral reaching realm. The amount of astral power he needed to consolidate his cultivation was much less than that of King Realm warriors. The cultivation speed inside the cultivation tower was much faster than outside. There was still half a year before the 1 year was up, which was enough time for Yixing to consolidate his cultivation to a very deep level. At the top of the 10th peak, inside the cultivation tower, Yixing directly went to the 3rd floor. There were 4 cultivation rooms on the 3rd floor. The doors were closed, and there were identity plates hanging outside. Clearly, there were people cultivating inside. The 4 identity plates had the names of Zheng Haoyu, Sun Gang, Gao Jian, and Zhen Zihan. They were all disciples of the 1st level. Yixing's strength was no weaker than the disciples of the 1st level of the 10th peak. He originally wanted to find a cultivation room on the 3rd level of the cultivation pagoda, but when he saw that there were people occupying it, he retreated to the 2nd level. There were a total of 12 cultivation rooms on the 2nd floor. There were only a few cultivation rooms in the cultivation tower, but there were a lot of disciples in the top 3 levels. If the rooms were divided equally, there would be 2 to 3 people cultivating in each room. The competition would be fierce. Now that the new disciples had been in the sect for half a year, whether they wanted to comprehend martial arts in the Enlightenment Mountain or consolidate their cultivation in the cultivation tower, the disciples had already made their decision. Every single cultivation room was occupied by someone. It was the same on the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, and the 1st floor. However, Yixing found an empty cultivation room on the 2nd floor. This was originally the cultivation room that Lin Chao had occupied. Lin Chao had been badly injured by Yixing in the 72nd courtyard, and was still recovering. He hadn't returned to the cultivation tower yet. Since there was an empty room, Yixing naturally wouldn't be polite. He hung his identity plate outside the door, and entered the 8th cultivation room on the 2nd floor. As soon as he entered the cultivation room, Yixing immediately sensed the rich astral energy in the surroundings. Yixing's super brain calculated and soon understood that cultivating here would be 2 times faster than cultivating in his room. In other words, cultivating here for a month would be more effective than cultivating in his room for 3 months. This is really a good place. Feeling the astral energy in the surroundings, Yixing's mood was very good. He thought to himself, there are still 4 more months before the 1-year end. If I cultivate here for 4 months, the effects will be better than cultivating in my room for a year. It should be enough for me to consolidate my cultivation to the peak of the 9th level. Yixing quickly circulated the high-grade mystic class meteor fall incantation. At the same time, he also used the black hole constellation. The black hole constellation in his body and the black hole constellation above him revolved at the same time, madly absorbing the astral energy in the surroundings to consolidate his cultivation. A day later, Lin Chao returned to the cultivation room. Seeing that someone was cultivating in the room he had previously occupied, he was instantly enraged. However, when he saw that the identity plate outside the door belonged to Yixing, although Lin Chao's anger didn't diminish, it was replaced by fear. Without saying anything, Lin Chao left the cultivation pagoda. He didn't dare to ask Yixing for the cultivation room back. Firstly, the cultivation room didn't belong to him, and secondly, he couldn't take it back from Yixing. Yixing cultivated in the 8th cultivation room on the 2nd floor, day after day. A huge amount of astral energy was absorbed by Yixing's body, and the strength of his astral energy increased by 1,000 miles every day. The peaceful days of cultivation lasted for more than 3 months, until one day, boom, a loud explosion woke Yixing from his cultivation state. Chapter 771. The sound came from the door of the cultivation room. The door of the cultivation room was made of ores, and was extremely sturdy. Moreover, it was reinforced by a formation. Even a high-level king would have a hard time destroying it. Although the door of the cultivation room was difficult to destroy, sound could still be transmitted in. That explosion just now was obviously someone attacking the door of the cultivation room. Asterisk Hong. Asterisk after 2 breaths of time, another explosion sounded. Yixing even felt the door of the cultivation room shake. Yixing raised his eyebrows and his eyes burned with anger. The most taboo thing to do during cultivation was to disturb someone. Attacking the door of the cultivation room while someone was cultivating was an extremely disrespectful act. Clearly, someone was deliberately looking for trouble. Could it be Lu Li has returned from Enlightenment Mountain? Yixing thought to himself. Among the disciples of the 10th peak, Yixing only had conflicts with the disciples of the Star Cloud continent. However, other than Lu Li, the disciples of the Star Cloud continent wouldn't come looking for trouble with Yixing. Yixing appeared behind the door of the cultivation room in a single step. Before the other party could attack again, he opened the door and walked out. On the 2nd floor of the cultivation tower, the explosion just now had obviously affected the other disciples. Many people came out of the cultivation tower. Those who were able to cultivate in the cultivation tower were all 3-star kings. 3-star kings were the elites of the elites in the 10th peak. Attacking the door of the cultivation room would affect everyone who was cultivating, and would definitely be hated by everyone. However, when these 3-star kings came out of the cultivation rooms, and saw the disciple who attacked the door of the cultivation room, they didn't get angry. Instead, they all looked at the door of the 8th cultivation room. Yixing also saw this person. On the first day of entering the Dark Star Temple, the disciples of the Star Cloud continent and Star Cloud continent had met face to face. Yixing was very sure that this person in front of him wasn't Lu Li. Although there were less than 2,000 disciples on the 10th peak, there were still 1,700 of them. Yixing wasn't familiar with many of them, so he didn't recognize this person. Yixing did not know this person, nor did he have any interactions with him. Yet he was attacking his cultivation room. This was simply starting a grudge for no reason at all. Yixing truly did not understand this person's intentions. Yixing asked, "Who are you?" This person's stature was very majestic. Hearing this, he smiled and raised his head. "Who am I? Haha. Kid, you don't even recognize me, and you still dare to come to the 2nd level." Without waiting for Yixing to speak, the man slapped his chest forcefully and shouted, "I'll slaughter 10,000 cities." Although Yixing did not recognize the other party, he knew the name Tu Wancheng. Tu Wancheng was a disciple ranked in the 2nd tier, and came from a powerful mid-tier continent, the Star Blood continent, which was stronger than the Star Cloud continent. Tu Wanqing could only be considered as the number 2 disciple of the Star Blood continent. The number 1 disciple was called Tu Qianzhong, who was ranked first. On the 10th peak, Tu Qianzhong was definitely famous. On the second day after Yi Xing returned from Enlightenment Mountain, he entered the cultivation tower to cultivate. However, he had also heard of Tu Qianzhong's deeds. In the first half of the year, there were 3 fights between disciples of the first tier, and 2 of them were related to Tu Qianzhong. Tu Qianzhong had fought against Sun Gang and Zhen Zihan of the first tier, and won both of them. It was obvious that he was one of the strongest among the disciples of the first tier, so of course his name was known throughout the 10th peak. Because of Tu Qianzhong's existence, the disciples of the Star Blood continent on the 10th peak were naturally arrogant. Even the arrogant disciples of the Star Cloud continent had to back down when they met him. Although Tu Wanqing was not as famous as Tu Qianzhong, he was still one of the best among the disciples of the second tier. With Tu Qianzhong as his support, Tu Wanqing could do whatever he wanted on the 10th peak. He might not even give face to some of the disciples of the first tier. Tu Wanqing started cultivating in the cultivation pagoda, occupying a cultivation room. 3 months ago, he went to Enlightenment Peak to comprehend the Tao. His perception was not very high, and after comprehending for 3 months, he did not gain anything. He felt that it would be better for him to consolidate his cultivation to the peak of the 3rd layer of the Astral Sea realm in the cultivation room, which would allow him to enter the ranks of the first-level disciples. Thus, Tu Wanqing returned to the cultivation tower. On the 2nd floor of the cultivation tower, there were no more cultivation rooms available. At this time, Tu Wanqing saw Yi Xing's identity card. Yi Xing was a 9th-star Venerable Lord, but he was ranked in the 3rd tier, and had the qualifications to cultivate in the cultivation tower. On the 10th peak he was considered a special person. Many people knew about him, and Tu Wanqing was one of them. A 9th-star Venerable Lord had the strength of a peak 2-star king. No matter which starry sky continent, this was an extremely heaven-defying battle strength. Many of the elite disciples were skeptical of Yi Xing's strength. Tu Wanqing did not believe that Yi Xing had the qualifications to enter the 3rd tier. Today, when he saw Yi Xing cultivating on the 2nd floor of the cultivation tower, he was instantly enraged. A 9th-star Venerable Lord had the qualifications to cultivate on the 2nd floor of the cultivation tower? Absolutely not, Tu Wanqing concluded in his heart. Thus, Tu Wanqing ignored the taboo and attacked the door of the cultivation room. The main reason why he ignored the taboo was that he did not put Yi Xing, a 9th-star Venerable Lord, in his eyes. Yi Xing looked at Tu Wanqing and said, "Do you know the consequences of attacking the door of the cultivation room when others are cultivating?" Tu Wanqing grinned and said, "Consequences? The consequences are for you to come out and go to the first tier that belongs to you. Otherwise..." Tu Wanqing clenched his fists and twisted his body. All the bones in his body crackled. "Otherwise I will teach you a lesson." Yi Xing said, "Lin Chao has already been defeated by me. According to the sect rules, I belong to the 2nd tier and have the qualifications to cultivate on the 2nd floor. You attacked the door of the cultivation room and disturbed my cultivation. How are you going to compensate me?" Yi Xing defeating Lin Chao was not a secret. Starcloud Continent's disciples cared about their reputation and would not speak of it, but Star Crescent Continent's disciples did not care about their reputation. The news had already spread. Some disciples had already heard of this battle. The disciples of the 2nd tier were all 3-star kings, and they did not believe it. Therefore, the disciples on the 2nd floor of the cultivation tower were looking at Tu Wanqing and Yi Xing with great interest. If the two fought, they would be able to verify whether Yi Xing had really defeated Lin Chao. Tu Wanqing had just returned from the Enlightenment Mountain. In order to focus on comprehending the Tao, he had turned off the communication bead, so he did not know that Yi Xing had defeated Lin Chao. Tu Wanqing's cultivation was at the late 3rd level of the Astral Sea realm, only a step away from the peak 3rd level. His strength was strong, and among the disciples of the 2nd tier, he was one of the strongest. Even Lin Chao, who was also an outstanding disciple of the 2nd tier, was somewhat inferior in front of Tu Wanqing. However, Tu Wanqing also knew that even if he was stronger than Lin Chao, the gap between them was not that big. If Lin Chao was defeated by Yi Xing, wouldn't it mean that he Tu Wancheng was also not Yi Xing's opponent? This was something Tu Wancheng would never believe. Chapter 772. He. Tu Wancheng stared at Yi Xing and laughed. You still want compensation? Fine, I'll compensate you and reward you with a few slaps on the face. As his voice fell, Tu Wancheng's aura soared. A surge of terrifying power erupted from his body, causing the void to tremble. Bang! Tu Wancheng punched out. Like a thunderclap, the void in front of him shattered as he punched towards Yi Xing's face. On the second floor of the cultivation pagoda, there were cultivation rooms on all sides. In the middle was a large hall that was only 10 meters long and wide. For a king, a distance of 10 miles could be covered in an instant. Now that there was less than 10 meters between them, it was simply a close combat battle. Tu Wancheng's punch didn't even take a tenth of an instant to hit Yi Xing. However, in terms of speed, Yi Xing wasn't inferior to any low-step king. Yi Xing's figure instantly disappeared, and Tu Wancheng's lightning-fast punch missed. The space was small, and Tu Wancheng's fist aura was contained within his fist. Although the momentum didn't seem vast, its power wasn't small at all. Where Yi Xing stood, the space was instantly shattered by the fist aura. When his punch missed, Tu Wancheng heard the sound of something breaking through the air behind him. His reaction speed was extremely fast, and his senses were extremely sharp. Without even turning his head, he punched out. Bang! Fist and finger collided, and a loud explosion rang out. Tu Wancheng felt as if his fist had been shot by an arrow, and there was a piercing pain. His body couldn't help but take a few steps back. As for Yi Xing, he had neutralized Tu Wancheng's fist aura without even taking half a step back. The difference in strength between the two was obvious. In just the first round, the spectating disciples were certain that Yi Xing's victory over Lin Chao was not a lie. A 9th-star venerable lord had defeated a 3-star king. This was simply unbelievable. When the spectating disciples confirmed this result, they were incomparably shocked. The one who was the most shocked was Tu Wancheng. The fist aura was fierce and the finger aura was sharp. When his fist clashed with Yi Xing's finger, he felt a piercing pain, but he was still pushed back. This meant that his strength was inferior, and the gap between them wasn't small. Whoosh! The void shattered. Yi Xing stabbed out with another finger, like an arrow piercing through the air. The speed at which the two exchanged blows was too fast. Only a tenth of a breath of time had passed after exchanging blows. Only king-level existences could see it clearly. Those below the king level probably couldn't see anything. Tu Wancheng immediately used his astrology, and a bright starlight soared into the sky. It was an extreme earth element astrology. Using astrology, Tu Wancheng's strength soared. His body was covered in a yellow glow. Regardless of whether it was his attack or defense, both had increased by several folds. Yi Xing's astral finger arrow was shattered by Tu Wancheng's punch. Yi Xing felt the pain coming from his fingertips and immediately retreated. The situation was instantly reversed. Tu Wancheng's strength was indeed higher than Lin Chao's by a notch. Yi Xing actually had an irresistible pressure when he did not use his astrology. Tu Wancheng's punch repelled Yi Xing, but there was no joy on his face because Yi Xing had yet to use his astrology. Kill! Tu Wancheng shouted. His astral energy exploded to the limit, and his speed increased to the limit. He unleashed his strongest punch, attacking Yi Xing with extreme speed. Yi Xing used his arrow intent and his body as an arrow. He instantly shattered the void and dodged to the side as if he had teleported. Tu Wancheng's punch missed. Boom! Tu Wancheng's punches were as fast as lightning. After his first punch missed, his second punch was already flying towards Yi Xing. The space of over 10 meters was too narrow. Tu Wancheng's fist force had enveloped the entire space. No matter where Yi Xing tried to hide, Tu Wancheng would know in an instant, and his attack would arrive in an instant. In the blink of an eye, Tu Wancheng threw out 10 punches. Yi Xing's body was like an arrow, and he dodged 10 times in a row. Even the 3-star kings who were spectating the battle were dazzled by the speed of the battle. Dodge. Let's see how many times you can dodge my attacks. Tu Wancheng shouted. As a late 3-star king, his astral energy was extremely dense. Although such fast attacks consumed a lot of his astral energy, he could still hold on for 2 hours without any problem. It was a long story, but the battle between the two had only lasted a little more than a breath's time. Every move and style had reached their limits, and a breath's time was enough for them to exchange 10 blows. Suddenly, a fiery red starlight soared into the sky. The illusory image of a blazing star appeared in the sky. Yi Xing had used an extreme-grade flame star. Tu Wanqing's cultivation was profound, his speed was also very fast, and his defense was also very strong. Even if it was a first-grade disciple, it would not be easy to defeat him. Yi Xing did not intend to waste time with him, so he used his astrology. The flame star image poured down a surging flame star power, and Yi Xing was like a flame god. His whole body was red, and there were flames burning in the void. The power of the extreme fire star aspect combined with the perfect fire grand momentum caused Yi Xing's power to increase exponentially. In an instant, the power of Yi Xing's attack had increased by a large margin. "Lose for me," Yi Xing shouted, and his finger shot out like an arrow. It pierced through the void and shot towards Tu Wanqing. This time, the astral finger arrow was covered in a layer of scarlet flames, and its might was more than 10 times stronger than before. Just the terrifying might it revealed made every single 3-star king present feel a sense of suffocation. Tu Wanqing's expression changed. From Yi Xing's finger, he felt like he was facing Tu Qianzhong. It was an absolute pressure, and it made his heart tremble instinctively. Although he was afraid, deep in his heart, Tu Wanqing was more angry. He was a 3-star king, a genius of the Star Blood continent. He could not tolerate being defeated by a 9-star venerable lord. Roar! Tu Wanqing's black hair fluttered in the wind, and he roared like a mad lion. He unleashed all his power. Under such a crazy state, he had almost surpassed his limit, and he unleashed 120% of his power. Terrifying power condensed in his fists, and they bloomed with a bright yellow light. It was as if they had turned golden. In an instant, the golden fist collided with the scarlet flame arrow-like astral finger. There was no explosion as expected, and there was no violent explosion. At the moment when the fist and finger collided, the airflow in all directions surged towards the point of collision, as if there was a strong suction force. At this moment, it was as if time had stopped, and there was only silence. This process only lasted half a blink of an eye. Puff! Tu Wanqing spat out a mouthful of blood, and he was sent flying. A terrifying airwave was instantly generated, and it covered the entire hall. The airwave was so strong that the 3-star king disciples could not open their eyes, and they quickly retreated into the cultivation room. Bang! Tu Wanqing crashed into the wall, and he was stuck on the wall for a breath's time before he fell to the ground. Chapter 773. Soon, the 3-star kings who had retreated into the cultivation rooms rushed out. Looking at Yi Xing standing in the middle of the hall, and Tu Wanqing who had fallen down the wall, all the disciples were dumbfounded. Tu Wanqing stood up with difficulty and spat out another mouthful of blood. His body swayed, and he almost fell down. Obviously, Tu Wanqing's injuries were not light. Attacking the door of someone's cultivation room when they were cultivating was a taboo. Yi Xing naturally wanted Tu Wanqing to suffer the consequences and pay the price. Tu Wanqing leaned against the wall, and after 2 to 3 breaths of time, he finally caught his breath and looked at Yi Xing fiercely. 2 to 3 breaths of time was very short for mortals or ordinary warriors. However, to a king who could attack more than 10 times in one breath, it was a very long time. With a king's vitality, ordinary injuries could be suppressed in less than half a breath. Tu Wanqing spent 2 to 3 breaths of time to suppress his injuries, which showed how serious his injuries were. Ever since he entered the Dark Star Divine Palace, Tu Wanqing had never suffered such a serious injury. In fact, in his 30 years of life he had only suffered such a serious injury twice. Therefore, Tu Wanqing looked at Yi Xing with eyes full of anger and viciousness. Facing Tu Wanqing's anger and viciousness, Yi Xing's expression was normal as he said, "When I was cultivating, you attacked the door of my cultivation room. This is a taboo. Even if I crippled you today, the Peak Master wouldn't think that I went overboard. Now, I'm just giving you a small lesson, and you can't take it?" Tu Wanqing was about to speak, but Yixing had already shouted, "Even if you can't take it, you have to take it. If you're not convinced, next time when I'm cultivating, you can attack the door as much as you want. However, next time it won't be so simple. I'll still break your meridians and cripple your cultivation. Get lost." The only way to deal with a fierce person was to be even fiercer. Yixing's words had completely destroyed Tu Wanqing's momentum. Although Tu Wanqing was still angry, he didn't dare to say anything in front of Yixing, and left in a sorry state. As soon as Tu Wanqing left, Yixing became the focus of all the 3-star King Realm disciples. Yixing's gaze swept across the disciples. The disciples felt as if they had been struck by lightning. They didn't dare to meet his gaze and retreated into the cultivation rooms. Yixing also entered cultivation room number 8 and took out his communication bead. Soon, the communication bead received a message. As Yixing had expected, the message was sent by Tu Qianzhong, the number 1 figure in the Starblood continent. Tu Qianzhong said, "Boy, you should be glad that I'm at Enlightenment Mountain. Otherwise, I would definitely crush your wretched bones. However, don't be too happy. There's still a month before the year-long competition for the new disciples begins. At that time, I will let all the disciples hear your screams. Just you wait." Yixing smiled casually. Tu Qianzhong was indeed famous on the 10th peak, but he couldn't scare Yixing. Yixing had already comprehended the 3 great forces of heaven and earth to perfection, and he had also comprehended a martial intent in his Tao of archery. Let alone the 10th peak, even if it were the entire 10 peaks, as long as they were outer court disciples, Yixing wouldn't fear anyone. Although Tu Qianzhong was strong, he wasn't necessarily the number 1 disciple of the 10th peak. He couldn't be compared to the number 1 figures of the other 9 peaks. How could Yixing be afraid of him? Yixing replied to Tu Qianzhong, "I'll wait for you. Don't let me down." Tu Qianzhong replied quickly, "I won't let you down. I will only make you despair." Luli Tu Qianzhong. It seems that the year-long competition for the new disciples won't be peaceful. Well, I'll settle all the grudges at that time. If I don't beat you down, you won't know who the real overlord of the 10th peak is. Yixing thought to himself. He was looking forward to the upcoming new disciple competition. The news of Tu Wanqing being defeated by Yixing on the 2nd level of the cultivation tower quickly spread among the disciples of the 10th peak. This time, there were more than 10 disciples who had witnessed the battle with their own eyes. They came from different mid-sized continents, and the news was spread much more widely than the battle between Yixing and Lin Chao. Yixing was originally a special person on the 10th peak. Now, even the 3-star King Tu Wanqing had been defeated by Yixing. When the disciples of the 10th peak heard the news, most of them were full of admiration for Yixing, a 9th-star venerable lord. Yixing's reputation on the 10th peak was naturally great. His reputation was so strong that he could catch up with the 8 disciples of the 1st level. Because of the impact of the battle with Tu Wanqing, the news of Yixing and Lin Chao's battle spread like wildfire. Almost all the disciples of the 10th peak knew that Yixing had offended Lu Li and Tu Qianzhong, 2 disciples of the 1st level. Yixing, Lu Li, and Tu Qianzhong would have a battle sooner or later. Currently, Lu Li and Tu Qianzhong were both in Enlightenment Mountain and would not return easily. However, when the 1-year period was up, all the new disciples would have to leave Enlightenment Mountain, and a battle would be held. All the disciples knew that the battle between Yixing, Lu Li, and Tu Qianzhong would definitely take place during the competition. All the disciples were looking forward to the competition. They wanted to know the limit of Yixing's strength as a 9th-star venerable lord. Could Yixing's strength be compared to the disciples of the 1st level? Everything would be revealed in the new disciple competition. The last month passed under the anticipation of the disciples. The 1-year period of the new disciples had finally arrived. Mingfeng had closed the cultivation tower a day earlier. Enlightenment Mountain was also sealed, and the disciples inside returned to their own peaks. Yixing had been cultivating on the 2nd floor of the cultivation tower for more than 4 months. The results were better than cultivating in his residence for a year. His cultivation base had stabilized to the peak of the 9th layer. Peak of the 9th layer of Astral Reaching Realm was only a step away from the 1st layer of Astral Reaching Realm. But in reality, it was the difference between a venerable and a king. It was a breakthrough of a major realm. For many martial artists, this was an extremely difficult barrier to break through. Even for martial artists with king's mandate and above, breaking through from venerable to king would require a long time. According to Yi Xing's estimation, if he were to continue cultivating in the cultivation tower, he would need another year or so to break through to Astral Sea Realm and become a king. With my strength, if I use all my trump cards and return to the Star Continent, I should be able to battle with Supreme King Meng Tai, and even defeat him. At that time, Brother He Biao and I will definitely be able to kill Meng Tai. At that time, the Great Yuan dynasty will have no leader, and will be destroyed in one fell swoop. The night before the competition, Yi Xing didn't think about the next day's battle. Instead, his thoughts returned to the Star Continent. He thought of Wei Qingxian, He Biao, and Hua Tianfeng. I wonder how they are now. Yi Xing couldn't wait to return. His gaze gradually became firm. No one could stop him from going home. Chapter 774. The grand competition for the new disciples began as scheduled. On this day, the 10 peaks of the outer court were bustling with noise and excitement. The disciples of each peak were gathered at the square at the foot of the mountain. As usual, there were 2 stages to the competition. The first stage was the group battle of the top 100. The new disciples would be divided into 50 groups, and the first and second of each group would be ranked in the top 100. The second stage was the point ranking competition. The top 100 disciples would fight against each other. A win would earn them 1 point, a draw would not earn them any points, and a loss would deduct 1 point. The final points would determine the ranking of the disciples, and the top 10 would be qualified to enter the Heavenly Bao continent. In the first stage, Yi Xing was assigned to the 25th group. He was the seeded contestant of that group. There was another seeded contestant in that group, who was ranked in the 3rd level, and was a 2-star peak king. In the end, Yi Xing was ranked first in his group, and entered the top 100. There was no dark horse in the second place of his group, and it was the 2-star peak king. In the first stage, there were many matches. Even though they were divided into different groups, it still took a day to determine the top 100. The disciples who entered the top 100 were all ranked in the top 3 levels. There were no dark horses. In the first stage, the only dark horse was Feng Xiaoxiao. After a year, his cultivation had broken through to become a 9th-star venerable lord. His strength had increased tremendously, and he had defeated a large number of 2-star kings. However, Feng Xiaoxiao had not broken through to the 9th-star venerable lord level for long, and he had not comprehended sword intent yet. Although his strength was not weak among the 2-star kings, he was still unable to defeat 2-star peak kings, and was unable to enter the top 100. On the second day, the grand competition ushered in the more intense second stage, the point ranking competition. In theory, everyone would have to fight against the other 99 people. The point ranking competition would be a very complicated competition. However, the purpose of the grand competition was to select the top 10 to enter the Heavenly Bao continent. Furthermore, the Dark Star Temple would only reward the top 10. Therefore, the top 10 rankings were determined. After that, the rankings were not important. In order to enter the top 10, one had to obtain at least 90 points. Every loss would result in a deduction of 1 point. This meant that as long as one lost or tied 10 matches, even if one won all the other 89 matches, one would not be able to enter the top 10. Therefore, there was a rule in the competition. Any disciple who entered the top 100 would be eliminated if they lost or tied for 10 matches in the second stage of the competition. After that, they would not need to compete with other disciples and would be judged as a failure to save time. The point ranking competition was the main event of the new disciple competition. It was no longer held in different areas, but in the arena in the middle of the square. All the disciples were there to watch. Among all the disciples, the ones with the loudest cheers were the 8 disciples who were ranked in the first level. Their strength was at the peak of the 3-star king level, and some of them had even reached the 4-star king level. As for the other 2 spots, some people thought highly of the outstanding disciples in the second level. In addition, Yi Xing also had a group of people who thought he would enter the top 10. Tu Wanqing was one of the top disciples in the second level. He had already been defeated by Yi Xing a month ago, and this battle record naturally made many disciples have full confidence in him. However, no one thought of Yi Xing as the number one candidate. Tu Qianzhang, Zheng Haoyu, and Gao Jian were the most popular contenders for the number one spot. Soon it was Yi Xing's turn. His opponent was not weak, and was one of the outstanding disciples in the second level, named Zhen Dongyue. Zhen Dongyue was a woman who was as cold as ice. White cold air floated around her body. Obviously, her attainments in the water element and ice element were extraordinary. Among the disciples in the second level, Zhen Dongyue's fame was even higher than Tu Wanqing's, because the two had fought before. It was before Tu Wanqing went to the Enlightenment Mountain. He had once flirted with Zhen Dongyue because of her beauty. As a result, Zhen Dongyue was enraged, and the two had fought for almost 100 moves. In the end, Tu Wanqing was defeated by Zhen Dongyue. Among the disciples in the second level, there were a few who were most likely to enter the top 10. Tu Wanqing was not one of them, but Zhen Dongyue was. On the arena, Zhen Dongyue looked at Yi Xing and said, "You are very young. I can feel your life force. You are younger than all the disciples, and you have not become a king, but you can already defeat Tu Wanqing. Your strength is also shocking. However, it is a pity that your first opponent is me, Zhen Dongyue. Under my cold air attack, your strength will be greatly affected, and you will not be able to display your full strength. As time passes, the restrictions on you will become stronger. If you fight with me, you will definitely lose." Yi Xing smiled indifferently. That may not be the case. Zhen Dongyue's expression was as cold as ice, and said, "Then I will use facts to tell you the result. Take this." As soon as her voice fell, a starlight soared into the sky. Zhen Dongyue had used her astrology, and it was an extremely cold ice astrology. It increased her cold air greatly, and the entire arena was covered with a layer of frost. A pair of silver-white upper-grade profound weapon gloves instantly appeared on her hands. Whoosh! Zhen Dongyue's palm was like 1,000 mountains covered in snow. Countless snowflakes mixed with the cold wind covered the entire arena. Yi Xing had nowhere to hide. Whoosh! A scarlet starlight soared into the sky. Yi Xing had used his fire astrology. Yi Xing did not need to retreat. His fire astrology was at the peak of the extreme astrology. The scorching aura instantly dispersed the cold air. The reason why Zhen Dongyue's palm was so strong was because of the cold air. It could affect the opponent's strength and limit them. When the cold air was dispersed, the power of his palm was reduced by 1 level. Yi Xing pointed out a finger. His finger was like an arrow, burning with scarlet flames. It gathered the power of the fire astrology and surging fire yuan qi. Its power was shocking, and its speed was extremely fast. As soon as the arrow was released, the palm that had enveloped the entire arena collapsed. Yi Xing's fingertip appeared in front of Zhen Dongyue in an instant. Zhen Dongyue's expression changed drastically. She had never expected that her cold air would have no effect on Yi Xing. Yi Xing's counterattack would be so fierce and fast. As one of the best among the 3 Star Kings, Zhen Dongyue's reaction was extremely fast. Even though Yi Xing's finger was out of her expectations, she still instinctively waved her palm to block the finger. Bang! With a crisp sound, the qi that had gathered in Zhen Dongyue's palm was instantly shattered. She felt an intense piercing pain coming from her palm. That sharp aura had actually pierced through her high-grade profound weapon gloves. Zhen Dongyue retracted her palm, as if she had been electrocuted. Her body was instantly sent flying out of the arena. Yi Xing had won his first battle. Even the top disciples of the second level were easily defeated by him. Chapter 775. Zhen Dongyue was already one of the most powerful disciples in the second level. Even Zhen Dongyue wasn't a match for Yi Xing. In the eyes of the disciples, Yi Xing's strength was enough to be mentioned in the same breath as the 8 disciples in the first level. In fact, this was indeed the case. In the following battles, Yi Xing swept all the way. Just like the 8 disciples in the first level, he won every battle. King-level warriors attacked as fast as lightning. In one breath, they could exchange more than a dozen moves. Unless the opponent's strength was on par with theirs, the battles would end very quickly. 2 hours had passed, and many disciples had already been eliminated because they had lost or tied more than 10 matches. Most of the disciples were also losing. There were only 9 people left who had a perfect record. Apart from the 8 disciples in the first level, Yi Xing was the only one. The 9 people who had a perfect record hadn't fought with each other yet. The battle between them was undoubtedly the battle that the disciples were looking forward to the most. Next battle, Lu Li versus Yi Xing. An outer sect deacon's loud and clear voice sounded. The disciples immediately quieted down and became spirited. Yi Xing raised his eyebrows. There was bound to be a battle between him and Lu Li. He didn't expect that the first battle between him and the 8 disciples in the first level would be Lu Li. However, Yi Xing had been waiting for this battle for a long time. Yi Xing flashed like a stream of light and entered the arena in an instant. At the same time, on the opposite side of the arena, a man in a red robe came up. He was emitting a scorching aura. There seemed to be invisible flames burning on his body, causing the air around him to be distorted. It was Lu Li. Lu Li raised his hand and took out a golden fan. It was a Xian weapon of the upper grade. He opened the fan and waved it. Instantly, a hot wind blew up and his black hair flew up. Yi Xing, it's finally our turn. Are you ready to let all the disciples hear your mournful screams? Lu Li waved the fan and said to Yi Xing with a smile. Yi Xing smiled. He too let out a scorching qi and energy. His force of fire at the complete realm began to move. Vast amounts of primordial energy of fire gathered from the void around him. Yi Xing's power was not inferior to Lu Li's. Yi Xing's understanding of the force of fire was higher than Lu Li's, which made up for the difference in cultivation. The illusory flames burned on Yi Xing's body, forming translucent waves that were visible to the naked eye. Yi Xing was like a messenger of fire. He stared at Lu Li and said calmly, You think too highly of yourself. Lu Li's eyes narrowed, revealing a dangerous aura. He chuckled and said, You're the one who thinks too highly of yourself. You're only a 9th star venerable lord. Do you really think you're invincible in the outer sect? Occupying disciples of the 2nd level is your limit. In front of me, Lu Li, there is only defeat for you. Who with that said, Lu Li used his astrology. A ray of starlight shot up to the sky. An extreme level of fire floated in the sky, pouring down a vast amount of fire star power. Lu Li's fire burned even more fiercely. His chi was like an erupting volcano. Swish, 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 Lu Li waved his saber. With 4 sharp sounds, blades of fire danced in the sky at a speed faster than the speed of sound. They attacked Yi Xing densely. Lu Li's strength was not ordinary to be ranked in the 1st level. Once he made a move, his aura was vast and mighty. Tu Wancheng, Zhen Dongyue, and the other disciples of the 2nd level could not compare to him. Lu Li only used one move. Among the 3-star kings, less than 1 out of 100 could withstand it. Any disciple of the 2nd level would be defeated by this move. However, Yi Xing was not a disciple of the 2nd level, who while Yi Xing used the force of fire, he also used the force of wind. The wind whistled. The primordial energy of wind surrounded Yi Xing, forming a huge whirlpool of wind. The wind aided the fire, making it stronger. The fire aided the wind, making the wind stronger. Yi Xing's astral arrow intent circulated and burst out. Strands of astral energy shot out of his body like dazzling arrows. They contained extreme penetrative power. The power of wind and fire merged into the astral arrows. Countless astral arrows burned with raging flames. They flew around Yi Xing along with the whirlpool, spreading out in all directions. The flame blades that were attacking Yi Xing were struck by the astral star arrows, and they were all shattered into pieces. At this moment, Yi Xing's aura was slightly stronger than Lu Li's. Around the arena, the disciples who were watching the battle were watching intently. Their eyes were filled with shock. Although they had already expected that Yi Xing's strength had reached the 1st level, Yi Xing was still only a 9th star venerable lord. In the eyes of these disciples, no matter how strong Yi Xing was, he could only contend with a disciple of the 1st level. Who would have thought that Yi Xing's strength would reach such a level? It looked like he was about to suppress Lu Li. It was unbelievable. Lu Li was also shocked by Yi Xing's strength. He didn't dare to believe that a mere 9th star venerable lord could erupt with such terrifying strength. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xing had gained the upper hand. Countless astral arrows were launched at Lu Li in retaliation. Fire dance 6 illusions. Lu Li shouted. His figure suddenly flashed and turned into 6 phantoms. The 6 phantoms were as fast as lightning. They attacked Yi Xing from different directions. Lu Li was proficient in the way of fire. This move, 6 illusions dance of fire, was something he had comprehended from the way of fire. It was extremely mysterious. Once it was executed, only 1 in 10,000 people of the same realm could withstand it. However, in terms of speed, Yi Xing didn't fear any low-level king. Even among mid-level kings, it was difficult to compare with Yi Xing. In an instant, Yi Xing withdrew the astral arrows. Arrow intent attached to his body. Using his body as an arrow, he changed his position 6 times in an instant as if he had teleported. In an instant, the 6 phantoms' attacks all missed. How was this possible? Lu Li was shocked. His fire dance 6 illusions wasn't just an illusion. Although only one of the 6 phantoms was real, the other 5 weren't completely illusory. Instead, they had powerful offensive power. Therefore, as long as one of the 6 phantoms' attacks hit, it could severely injure the opponent. Ever since Lu Li comprehended the fire dance 6 illusions, he had never met a king of the same realm who could completely avoid it, let alone a warrior with a lower cultivation. On the other hand, Yi Xing was only a 9th-star venerable lord. He wasn't even a king, and his cultivation was much lower than Lu Li's. Yet he was able to completely dodge the 6 illusions. How could Lu Li not be shocked? Man and fan as one cut. Lu Li shouted angrily. The 6 phantoms merged into one, and their strength erupted to the limit. The fan slashed out, and the fiery blade slashed down like a heavenly blade. In any case, the arena was only so big. When Lu Li used his full strength, his attack range covered the entire arena. No matter how amazing the movement technique was, it couldn't avoid his attack. Therefore, Lu Li threw away all restraints and used his full strength to attack with this strongest attack. Chapter 778. He's too powerful. Senior brother Gao Jian comprehended sword intent, but he's still no match for senior brother Zheng Haoyu. It seems like the first place of this competition will be senior brother Zheng Haoyu. Senior brother Gao Jian comprehended sword intent, so his strength should be at the level of a 4-star king. Senior brother Zheng Haoyu is even stronger than senior brother Gao Jian. I'm afraid he's an expert among 4-star kings. Senior brother Zheng Haoyu is indeed powerful, but senior brother Tu Qianzhang's strength is also unfathomable. He has also defeated 2 senior brothers of the 1st level. I'm afraid he's not any weaker than senior brother Zheng Haoyu. Senior brother Gao Jian comprehended sword intent, and has the strength to fight for 1st place. Senior brother Zheng Haoyu defeated senior brother Gao Jian, but it's different from senior brother Tu Qianzhang, who defeated senior sister Yu Feifei and senior brother Zhen Zihan. Indeed, if senior brother Zheng Haoyu really wants to take 1st place, even if there's a variable, this variable will only happen to senior brother Tu Qianzhang. Around the arena, the disciples were whispering. After Zheng Haoyu defeated Gao Jian, his popularity soared. Most of the disciples believed that Zheng Haoyu would definitely take 1st place. However, there were still some disciples who believed that Tu Qianzhang's strength might not be below Zheng Haoyu's. Without fighting, the outcome couldn't be determined. They believed that Tu Qianzhang still had a chance to take 1st place. Although Yi Xing was also listed as a strong contender for 1st place, Zheng Haoyu's defeat of Gao Jian had obviously raised the level of strength. Therefore, Yi Xing was instinctively excluded from the top contenders. After all, Yi Xing was only a 9-star venerable lord. His cultivation was too low. The reason why he caused such a commotion wasn't because his strength had reached the level of Zheng Haoyu and Tu Qianzhang. It was because his strength was relatively shocking compared to his cultivation. However, the battle for 1st place wasn't about strength and cultivation, but about one's true strength. Even if one had potential, even if one had great achievements in the future, that was still the future. Right now, Yi Xing was naturally ignored by the disciples. The battles continued, and the more disciples were eliminated. The chances of the 1st-level disciples fighting each other also increased. Every few rounds there would be a fight. After Yi Xing defeated Lu Li, the second disciple he met at the first level was Zhen Zihan. Yi Xing was a swordsman, but his strength was not very outstanding. Among the kings of the same realm, he could only be considered to be in the front. He was far from the peak level. Compared to Lu Li, who was practically invincible among the 3-star kings, there was still a gap between him and Yi Xing naturally. He was not Yi Xing's opponent. Next match, Yi Xing vs Sun Gang. After defeating Zhen Zihan, not long after, it was Yi Xing's turn to go on stage. This time his opponent was much stronger. After Sun Gang defeated Yu Feifei, he ran into Lu Li. They exchanged dozens of moves before Sun Gang won. Sun Gang was not only strong, but also had a strong defense. Lu Li's attack power was slightly better than Sun Gang's, so he had the upper hand in the beginning. Although his fire blade hit Sun Gang twice, it didn't hurt him. After dozens of moves, Lu Li was only hit once by Sun Gang. He spat out blood and was knocked off the ring. It could be seen that Sun Gang was not easy to deal with. The stronger Sun Gang was, the stronger Zheng Haoyu was. Sun Gang's physique was strong. He was 2 meters tall with well-developed muscles. He was full of explosive power, like an iron tower. He carried a pitch-black iron rod on his shoulder. It was incomparably heavy, weighing more than 10,000 pounds. In front of Sun Gang, Yi Xing, who was 1.8 meters tall, seemed a little short. Sun Gang looked down at Yi Xing, grinned, and said in a muffled voice, "Yi Xing, I saw your battle with Lu Li. I was surprised that you could beat him. But this time, I won't be surprised again. Your attack can't hurt me at all. In front of me, you will lose without a doubt." Yi Xing looked at Sun Gang and smiled. "I also saw your battle with Lu Li. He almost broke your defense. It can be seen that your defense is not as strong as you think. If I want to hurt you, it will be easy." "Ha!" Sun Gang laughed loudly. He stomped the heavy iron rod on the ground and said, "You think it's easy to injure me? I'm standing right here. Come and try. See if you can hurt me." As he spoke, a ray of starlight shot into the sky and turned into a bluestone star. It was an extreme earth element astrology. Stone to earth was like ice to water. In terms of defense, the petrified earth element astrology was better than the normal earth element astrology. At the same time, Sun Gang circulated his astral energy, and a layer of stony defensive layer instantly appeared on the surface of his body. The defensive effect was even better than that of a high-grade profound-grade inner armor. Without the attacking power of a mid-step king, it would be impossible to break through this layer of stony defense. Sun Gang patted his chest loudly and laughed loudly. "Come on. Didn't you say you can hurt me easily? Come on." All the disciples' eyes were focused on Yi Xing. Yi Xing's strength was indeed shocking. However, Sun Gang's defense was as strong as a wall. Lu Li's attack power was strong enough. It was the limit of a 3-star king, but it couldn't break Sun Gang's defense. Even if Yi Xing's attack power was stronger than Lu Li's, in the eyes of the disciples, it wouldn't be much stronger. It would be difficult for him to hurt Sun Gang. On the other side of the stage, Yi Xing looked at Sun Gang, who was patting his chest, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. He immediately used the fire astrology. At the same time, the arrow intent and astral energy were activated. Yi Xing's aura burst out in an instant. However, in Sun Gang's eyes, in the eyes of the disciples, it was still not enough. Yi Xing had used all these methods before. However, with the attack power that Yi Xing had shown, he couldn't break Sun Gang's defense. Sun Gang laughed and said, "Is that it? Yi Xing, with your current performance, you still have a long way to go if you want to hurt me." Yi Xing raised his hand, and a bow that seemed to be burning with red flames appeared in his hand. It was a high-grade Xian bow, red flame bow. With the bow in hand, Yi Xing's aura changed in an instant. Its sharpness increased by more than 10 times. Ever since Yi Xing comprehended the arrow intent, the astral energy in his body changed. He could use his body as a bow and astral energy as an arrow. He had never directly used a bow to fight an enemy. However, the arrow intent and the archer were the best combination. It was like a swordsman who comprehended the sword intent. Only by using a sword could he display the greatest power. The arrow intent also needed a bow and arrow to fully display its brilliance. With the red flame bow in hand, Yixing instantly drew the bow. The astral energy on the bowstring condensed into an arrow. The sharpness was 10 times stronger than the astral energy directly condensed into an arrow. Although the strength of the arrow remained the same, its penetrative power and destructive power had greatly increased. What kind of defense could withstand this arrow? Chapter 779. The smile on Sun Gang's face froze the moment the arrow locked onto him. His eyes were filled with shock and fear. Yixing's arrow was too powerful, causing him to feel an instinctive fear. The more powerful a martial artist was, the more confident he would be, and the more sensitive his senses would be. He would naturally be able to sense attacks that were difficult to block. At this moment, Sun Gang felt that it was difficult to block Yixing's arrow. It was as if he would be severely injured as soon as Yixing shot the arrow. No. Impossible. Sun Gang got rid of the fear in his heart and strengthened his confidence. He's only a 9th star supremacy. No matter how strong he is, there's a limit to his strength. He can't hurt me. Impossible. Sun Gang used all his strength to activate the astral energy and the power of his astrology to the maximum. The stone defense on the surface of his body emitted a green glow and seemed to be flowing with light. He held the black iron staff tightly with both hands and was on high alert. He was ready to shoot down Yixing's arrow at any time. Whoosh! Suddenly, the arrow in Yixing's hand left the bowstring and shot out explosively. Even though the disciples had fixed their eyes on Yixing without blinking, they only saw a flash of light and lost track of the arrow. The speed of this arrow was too fast. When the arrow's speed reached a certain level, it could break through the void. The air was the only resistance. Therefore, when the arrow's penetrating power was strong enough and its aura was sharp enough, the speed at which it pierced through the air would be greatly increased. With the arrow intent, Yixing's arrow's penetrating power increased by more than 10 times. The arrow's speed was naturally extremely fast, almost surpassing the passage of time. Among the disciples of the 10th peak, the number of people who could barely see the trajectory of Yixing's arrow could not be counted on one hand. Although Sun Gang's defense was strong, his reaction was not top-notch, so he was not included. When the arrow left the bowstring and the light flashed, Sun Gang knew that he could not block the arrow. The only way to deal with it was to dodge. Although Yixing's arrow was extremely fast, he was still confident that he could dodge it if he moved within a small area. However, just as Sun Gang thought of dodging, he was shocked to discover that the space around him had become viscous. The air was like a stream of water, creating a great resistance. How fast was Yixing's arrow? It happened in an instant. There wasn't even the passage of time. Sun Gang's body moved. Originally, he was going to change his position in an instant, but the air resistance caused his speed to slow down for a moment. Although it was less than 1/10 of a blink of an eye, it was more than enough time for Yixing to shoot an arrow. The astral arrow struck Sun Gang's body from an unexpected angle. That layer of stone defense was instantly penetrated by the arrow. The sharp arrow pierced through Sun Gang's stone defense, piercing through his inner armor and cutting into his body. The intense pain caused Sun Gang to cry out in pain. His body involuntarily flew backwards and fell onto the arena. Hiss! All the disciples sucked in a breath of cold air. The result of this battle was once again out of their expectations. No one had thought that Yixing would be able to defeat Sun Gang in a single move. The fearsomeness of that arrow struck fear into the hearts of all the disciples. Yixing wins, 1 point added. Sun Gang loses, 1 point deducted. Yixing continued to maintain his winning streak, ending Sun Gang's winning streak. At this point, only Yixing, Zheng Haoyu, and Tu Qianzhong had a winning streak. The latter two were the hot candidates for first place. However, Yixing's defeat of Sun Gang gave some disciples a thought. Perhaps Yixing was also in the competition for first place? Of course, this was just a thought. If they wanted to be sure, they had to at least cross the mountain known as Gaojian. Although Gaojian did not maintain a winning streak, he was one of the initial candidates for first place. There was no doubt about his strength. Yixing's qualification to compete for first place had to be tested by Gaojian. If he could defeat Gaojian, then he definitely had the strength to compete for first place. If he could not defeat Gaojian, then competing for first place would be completely meaningless. Yi Xing and Sun Gang's battle did not last long. Soon it was the turn of the first-level disciples. This time it was Tu Qianzhong against Gao Jian. This would be yet another battle between the pinnacle. Not only that, Tu Qianzhong was the same as Yi Xing, he would also have to face Gao Jian. Although Tu Qianzhong was powerful and famous, no one dared to say that Tu Qianzhong could win against Gao Jian. Like Yi Xing, Tu Qianzhong would only be qualified to compete with Zheng Haoyu for first place if he defeated Gao Jian. If he lost to Gao Jian, then he would have no chance at first place. In the arena, Gao Jian and Tu Qianzhong stood facing each other. Gao Jian's sword aura was surging and extremely sharp. It contained the aura of sword intent that swept across the area. In the previous battle between Zheng Haoyu and Gao Jian, Zheng Haoyu was suppressed by Gao Jian's sword aura. It could be seen how strong Gao Jian's sword aura was. Ha ha! Tu Qianzhong laughed in the face of Gao Jian's sword aura suppression. He did not care. With his laughter, an illusory saber shadow appeared above his head. A terrifying aura that could cut off heaven and earth instantly erupted. Tu Qianzhong smiled and said, "Martial intent, I also have." Saber intent. It's saber intent. Senior brother Tu Qianzhong actually comprehended saber intent at Enlightenment Mountain. My God, senior brother Tu Qianzhong's strength is very powerful. He could compete with Gao Jian. Now that he has comprehended saber intent, how can Gao Jian be his opponent? The disciples suddenly exclaimed, their voices shaking. At this time, the battle had already begun. As soon as Tu Qianzhong's voice fell, he used astrology, took out a high-grade black saber, and slashed out. The attack was swift and fierce, shrouding the entire arena. Tu Qianzhong's saber technique was originally overbearing. Now that it contained saber intent, its power was on another level. He attacked Gao Jian fiercely, one saber strike after another. Even though Gao Jian had comprehended sword intent and his sword moves were as powerful as thunder, he was still suppressed by Tu Qianzhong's saber technique. In the 12th saber strike, Gao Jian could not withstand it. He was sent flying by Tu Qianzhong's saber and lost the battle. Tu Qianzhong withdrew his astrology saber and aura. However, his black hair was flying, and there was still a kind of overbearing momentum. His eyes revealed arrogance. First, he glanced at Zheng Haoyu to show that he was not afraid of Zheng Haoyu. Then he looked at Yi Xing with a trace of ruthlessness. Yi Xing felt the words in Tu Qianzhong's eyes. "Boy, I'll wait for you." Yi Xing's expression was as usual. He did not feel any pressure against Tu Qianzhong. If he entered the top 10, he would be qualified to go to the Heavenly Bao continent. Yi Xing's goal had been achieved. As for the final ranking, he would try his best, but he did not care. Yi Xing was certain to enter the top 10. No matter how powerful Tu Qianzhong was, he could not shake his mind. Chapter 780. In this battle, Tu Qianzhong's strength was beyond the disciples' expectations. Before this, Zheng Haoyu was the most popular candidate for first place, but after this battle, Tu Qianzhong's voice also rose, and he was on par with Zheng Haoyu. Zheng Haoyu and Tu Qianzhong's fame attracted the disciples' attention. Naturally, Yi Xing was ignored. Few people would compare Yi Xing with Zheng Haoyu and Tu Qianzhong in the battle for first place. The competition continued. More and more disciples were eliminated. Yi Xing went through a few more battles, and his opponents were defeated one by one. Among them was Yu Feifei, who was in the first place. Next battle, Gao Jian versus Yi Xing. After a few battles without any suspense, Yi Xing was once again facing a heavyweight opponent. The disciples' spirits were also lifted. The battle between Yi Xing and Gao Jian was very important. Gao Jian's strength was undoubtedly strong. Whether it was Zheng Haoyu or Tu Qianzhong, they both used more than 10 moves to defeat Gao Jian. If Yi Xing could defeat Gao Jian, he would be on par with Zheng Haoyu and Tu Qianzhong. Of course, this referred to the situation where he could defeat Gao Jian quickly. If the two fought fiercely for more than 100 moves, Yi Xing would naturally not be on par with Zheng Haoyu and Tu Qianzhong, who defeated Gao Jian in less than 10 moves. In the arena, Yi Xing held the crimson flame bow in his hand, and there was an illusory flame burning on his body. He was like a flame emissary, and his momentum was wild and hot. Gao Jian's white robe fluttered, and his sword momentum soared to the sky. Lightning swam around his body, and the void crackled. Gao Jian's sword momentum was strong, but it did not affect Yi Xing's half of the arena. Yi Xing's arrow was unexpectedly released, and there seemed to be an invisible barrier blocking the suppression of the sword intent. Yi Xing said, "Senior brother Gao Jian, I have to thank you." Gao Jian naturally understood what Yi Xing was talking about. He smiled calmly and said, "I'm just following my heart. There's no need to thank me." Pausing for a moment, Gao Jian said, "Don't purposely give in to me because of this. If you respect me, then attack with all your strength. Even if I lose, I'll be satisfied. If you purposely give in, then it'll be a disgrace for me to win this battle." Yi Xing nodded and said, "I'll do my best. Senior martial brother Gao Jian, take this." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xing had already drawn his scarlet flame bow. His originally violent aura was now 10 times stronger than before, and an astral arrow was quickly formed. Boom! Gao Jian did not give Yi Xing the chance to successfully condense the arrow. He swung his sword, and the sound of thunder exploded. The sword force was like a thunder dragon that instantly attacked. Technique of the 9 heavens astral travel. Yi Xing attached himself to the arrow will, and displayed the lightness skill of the perfection of martial arts. His body flickered like a stream of light, and instantly changed his position. The Thunder Dragon sword force missed. Gao Jian reacted quickly and swept his sword. The moment Yi Xing appeared, the Thunder Dragon sword force had already pounced on him. The astral arrow had not been completely formed, but Yi Xing had no choice but to deal with this sword. The unformed astral arrow turned into a black flame ripple and shot out. The black flame ripple contained an extremely sharp aura. It cut the Thunder Dragon sword force in half, and the arrow itself was instantly shattered. 3 thunderbolt swords. Gao Jian roared and leaped up. In an instant he swung his sword 3 times. The sword will swept in all directions, and the sound of thunder exploded. The entire arena was shaking. 3 streaks of sword force fell from the sky. Each of the streaks of sword force had the power of thunder. The 3 thunderbolt swords enveloped the entire arena, and there was no way to avoid it. Yi Xing stood in his original position, and drew a circle with the scarlet flame bow in his hand. Darkness devour. The wind, fire, and darkness primordial chi gathered and formed a black flame vortex. It contained an extremely powerful arrow will that could tear everything apart. The black flame vortex had a terrifying devouring power. It sucked in the 3 streaks of sword force and crushed them into pieces. Gao Jian was stunned. Yi Xing actually had such a unique bow weapon. It was out of his expectations. At this moment, Yi Xing took a step forward. The arrow will pierced through the air, and appeared in front of Gao Jian as if he had teleported. The scarlet flame bow carried the terrifying power of fire as it shot out. 1,000 fire thunder. Rumble. The violent flames exploded and let out a thunderous explosion. Its power was terrifying. The fire astral aspect, fire force, and fire primordial chi worked together perfectly at this moment. They exploded and the shadow of the bow was about to shatter the sky. The speed of this attack was too fast. Even though Gao Jian had comprehended the sword will, he still felt flustered. He quickly sealed his sword to defend himself. Bang! The terrifying power collided and Gao Jian felt his arm go numb. Yi Xing took advantage of the situation and continued to move forward. He continued to use the fire bow weapon. Every attack had a terrifying explosion of flames and a thunderous explosion. Gao Jian unleashed his strength to the limit and quickly defended himself. However, he could not reverse the situation and was forced to retreat. In just a dozen moves, Gao Jian was forced to the edge of the arena. Under Yi Xing's suppression, he had no choice but to retreat from the arena and lose this battle. Yi Xing wins, points increase by 1. Gao Jian loses, points decrease by 1. The outer court deacon who presided over the competition immediately announced the result. Yi Xing continued to maintain his winning streak. Like Zheng Haoyu and Tu Qianzhang, he defeated Gao Jian. Yi Xing really won? Yi Xing defeated senior brother Gao Jian. It seems that Yi Xing also has a chance to fight for first place. If a 9th star venerable lord takes first place, my god. I can't imagine the result. Yi Xing defeated senior brother Gao Jian in just a dozen moves. He does indeed have the strength to fight for first place. It's different. Senior brother Gao Jian was defeated by senior brother Zheng Haoyu and senior brother Tu Qianzhang, and was injured. However, he was able to retreat unscathed against Yi Xing. It can be seen that there is still a gap between Yi Xing and the two senior brothers. He won't be in the first round. What if senior brother Gao Jian retreated unscathed because Yi Xing deliberately went easy on him? How is that possible? Senior brother Gao Jian is so strong. Could it be that he held back when fighting with senior brother Gao Jian? Impossible. Below the arena, the disciples discussed animatedly. Yi Xing defeated Gao Jian and displayed his strength. Many disciples included him in the list of contenders for first place. However, there were still many disciples who did not think that Yi Xing was a match for Zheng Haoyu and Tu Qianzhang. They thought that the first place would only appear between the two of them. Yi Xing did not care about the opinions of the disciples. He did not care whether he was in first place or not. The key was that if he fought with Tu Qianzhang, he would definitely go all out. Tu Qianzhang would definitely try to injure him in the duel, because of Tu Wancheng. Yi Xing would definitely not let him succeed. Instead, he would counterattack. The duel continued. After a dozen more battles, more disciples were eliminated. The duel was nearing its end. Currently, only Yi Xing, Tu Qianzhang, and Zheng Haoyu were still undefeated. The disciples were looking forward to the duels between the three of them. Not letting down the expectations of the disciples, it didn't take long for a battle between the three of them to begin. Next duel, Zheng Haoyu versus Tu Qianzhang. Chapter 783. The result of the match between Yi Xing and Zheng Haoyu exceeded the disciples' expectations. Only with true battle results could one gain fame. As a 9-star supremacy, Yi Xing was looked down on by the disciples in terms of cultivation. However, after the many battles, his fame gradually rose. Now Xiaochen's defeat of Zheng Haoyu shocked everyone. His fame soared, catching up to Tu Qianzhang. No disciple dared to say that Yi Xing was not qualified to fight for the first rank anymore. However, the disciples still believed that Tu Qianzhang had the upper hand in the match between Yi Xing and Tu Qianzhang. His chances of victory were higher. However, all the disciples had to admit that Yi Xing was already a strong contender for the first rank. It was not impossible for him to obtain the first rank. After a dozen more battles, there was only one last battle left in the grand competition. Next battle, Yi Xing versus Tu Qianzhang. All the disciples had been waiting for this battle. When they heard this, they felt energized. These two disciples who had maintained a clean record were finally going to fight. The result of this battle would determine who would obtain the first rank in this competition. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Xing and Tu Qianzhang's figures appeared on the arena at the same time. Senior brother Tu will win. Senior brother Tu will win. Tu Qianzhang had many supporters. Many disciples below the arena cheered, their voices sounding like they could topple mountains and overturn seas. The battle for the first rank was the most important in every new disciple competition. Mo Qingyang, Elder Zhao Yuan and Elder Wu Mingtong, who were watching from afar, did not stop the disciples from cheering. Although they were far away, quasi-gods had very strong eyesight. Everything in the plaza at the foot of the mountain was clearly visible. Mo Qingyang looked at Yi Xing and Tu Qianzhang on the arena. Then he looked at the two quasi-gods at the side and said, "Junior brothers, who do you think will obtain the first rank?" Yi Xing, Tu Qianzhang. Zhao Yuan and Wu Mingtong spoke at the same time, but they said different names. Mo Qingyang looked at Zhao Yuan and asked, "Junior brother Zhao, how do you know it's Yi Xing?" Zhao Yuan smiled faintly and said, "Throughout this competition, Yi Xing's strength has increased along with the strength of his opponents. It seems to be bottomless, and can always surprise and surprise others. I believe that this time he will surprise me again and..." Zhao Yuan paused for a moment before continuing. He's only a 9th-star Venerable Lord, but his strength has reached the level of a 4-star Venerable Lord. His ability to challenge those at a higher level is truly heaven-defying. In the past 10,000 years, only the Palace Master, the Divine Emperor, had such heaven-defying battle prowess when he was a 9th-star Venerable Lord. Such a heaven-defying monster will definitely stir up a storm in the future. When the Palace Master Divine Emperor was mentioned, Mo Qingyang and Wu Mingtong revealed a respectful expression. After Zhao Yuan finished speaking, Wu Mingtong chuckled and said, "What kind of person is the Palace Master Divine Emperor? It's really inappropriate for junior brother Zhao to compare an outer disciple with him. The gap between them is as vast as the ocean. How can they be compared? The Palace Master Divine Emperor is a true god, while Yixing comes from the most ordinary medium continent. Having a quasi-god's fate of 1 or 2 stars is the limit of the limit. They are not on the same level." Zhao Yuan said, "I'm only saying that Yixing's strength when he was a 9th-star Venerable Lord is comparable to the Palace Master Divine Emperor when he was a 9th-star Venerable Lord. Senior Brother Wu, don't misunderstand. The Palace Master Divine Emperor referred to the Palace Master of the Dark Star Divine Palace. At the same time, he was also the Divine Emperor of the Dark Star Divine Kingdom. Only the strongest among true gods could be respectfully addressed as Divine Emperors. The Palace Master of the Dark Star Divine Palace was the strongest among the true gods. Not only was he the #1 expert in the Dark Star Divine Palace, but he was also one of the top existences in the entire flowing light boundary. Both the elders and disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace were very respectful towards this Palace Master Divine Emperor. Mo Qingyang looked at Wu Mingtong and said, "Junior brother Wu, why do you think it's Tu Qianzhang?" Wu Mingtong said, "With senior brother Mo's eyesight, you must be able to see the difference in strength between the two. The gap is very small. Tu Qianzhang is a bit stronger, but it's very limited. With Yixing's attainments in archery, if they fought in the wilderness, there would be enough space for him to move freely. Tu Qianzhang would definitely not be his opponent. But on the stage, the battle range is limited. Yixing would definitely not be Tu Qianzhang's opponent. I think he would be able to last 20 moves against Tu Qianzhang at most." Mo Qingyang pondered for a moment and said, "You're right. However, what if Yixing still has a trump card?" Wu Mingtong said, "What kind of trump card could he have that even our divine eyes can't see through?" Astral-reaching venerables could open the martial Dao Heavenly Eye. After becoming a quasi-god, the Heavenly Eye would evolve into a divine eye. Not only would the eyesight increase by 100 times, it would also have all kinds of benefits. Mo Qingyang nodded, agreeing with Wu Mingtong's words. On the side, Zhao Yuan raised a contrary opinion. A 9-star Venerable Lord with a 4-star King's battle strength. Such a heaven-defying monster is rare. Could he really be as simple as we think? I feel that I can't see through him. Even true god experts aren't omnipotent. It should be normal for a quasi-god to be unable to see through a monstrous genius with great fortune. Mo Qingyang nodded. Junior brother Zhao's words make sense. Let's wait and see. The result will be clear soon. On the stage, Yixing and Tu Qianzhang had already started fighting after a few unpleasant words. Blood Cloud Saber Arts. Tu Qianzhang's extreme metal constellation had merged his saber intent into his saber aura. It was incomparably sharp, and its offensive power was shocking. The blood-colored saber danced in his hand. Every saber strike contained a golden light mixed with a blood-colored radiance. It was like a huge wave in the sea or a dense cloud covering the sky. Yixing held the Scarlet Flame Bow and used the Extreme Fire Star constellation. He executed the Dark Wind Fire Arrow art. Using the bow as a weapon, he drew out many dark vortexes, neutralizing Tu Qianzhang's attacks one after another. However, Tu Qianzhang's attacks were swift and fierce. They were even more powerful than Zheng Haoyu's fiendish Wind 18 spears. When the blood-colored saber chopped down, the golden radiance mixed with a blood-red radiance was overwhelming. Yixing's dark vortexes continuously neutralized his opponent's moves. However, he felt great pressure. After just a dozen moves, the dark vortexes could no longer be maintained and started to collapse. This martial technique of yours can neutralize other people's moves. It is indeed very special. Unfortunately, this move is not strong enough. Its neutralization ability is limited. Ha! Tu Qianzhang laughed heartily. He was in a very good mood. Prepare to receive the pain I will bring you. Blood cloud covering the sky. As Tu Qianzhang roared, The blood-colored saber in his hand slashed out again and again. Rays of golden saber aura mixed with red blotted out the sky as they chopped down on Yi Xing, enveloping the entire stage. This move was unavoidable. Yi Xing operated the astral arrow intent to the limit. He used 3 kinds of worldly momentum at the same time. However, he still could not prevent the dark vortexes from collapsing. The saber aura was too dense. The arena was limited. Yi Xing could not avoid it. Facing this move, Yi Xing was almost in a desperate situation. Chapter 784. Yi Xing's about to lose. This is the 15th move. It looks like I was overestimating him when I said he'd last 20 moves at most. In the distance, quasi-god Wu Mingtong casually said. On the side, quasi-god Zhao Yuan ignored Wu Mingtong. Instead, he opened his divine eye and locked onto Yi Xing. He had a feeling that Yi Xing wasn't as simple as he seemed. He was certain that Yi Xing wouldn't lose so easily. He had to have other tricks up his sleeve. Yi Xing did have other trump cards. The black hole astrology and Sagittarius astrology. However, Yi Xing didn't plan to use them in the match. Exposing one's entire strength under the gazes of everyone on the arena was undoubtedly an unwise action. Moreover, the higher Yi Xing's cultivation, the more he realized how rare paramount astrology was. It was best to use it sparingly unless it was a matter of life and death. Besides, Yi Xing didn't have to use the black hole astrology or Sagittarius astrology. There were other ways to deal with Tu Qianzhong. Yi Xing's forehead split open as he activated his martial Dao celestial eye. At the same time, he activated his superbrain scanning function. Although Tu Qianzhong's blood cloud blotting the sky was dense and powerful, it wasn't without weaknesses. The attack was most powerful when it was focused on a single point. This move's power would be divided into different areas, but Yi Xing wouldn't have noticed it under normal circumstances. Now that he activated his martial Dao celestial eye and his superbrain scanned the area, Yi Xing saw everything in front of him. A vision model appeared in his mind. Everything in front of him, even the slightest wisp of air, was clearly scanned by the superbrain. In an instant, Yi Xing discovered the weakness of Tu Qianzhong's move. There were several spots where the attack power was very weak. Although these spots weren't large and didn't have anything special in the air of blades, they couldn't escape the superbrain scanning. Thunderclap of myriad flames. Yi Xing had already prepared this attack, and he aimed it at the weakest point of the astral saber. The shadow of a flaming bow instantly shot out, and the terrifying power of flames exploded like thunder. Boom! Wherever the shadow of the flaming bow passed, the void shattered, and the saber aura in the area was instantly pulverized. Whoosh! Yi Xing's figure was like a small fish in a large net. He passed through the dense net of saber auras, and rushed out through the gap created by the flaming bow. Bowstring wind slash. Yi Xing's arrow will was attached to his body, and he was as fast as teleportation. As soon as he broke through the net of sabers, he appeared in front of Tu Qianzhong in an instant. The crimson flame bow in his hand swept out horizontally. The momentum of the wind and the arrow intent were displayed to the limit. The bowstring cut horizontally like a knife, cutting the void into two like a mirror. The bowstring of the crimson flame bow slashed at Tu Qianzhong's neck. If this attack succeeded, Tu Qianzhong's head would be chopped off. It took a long time to describe, but in reality, it happened in the blink of an eye. The two exchanged offense and defense, and Yi Xing completed the transition from defense to offense in an instant. In the distance, quasi-god Wu Mingtong's smile that seemed to have seen through everything froze on his face. The change in the battle situation was beyond his expectations. As for quasi-god Zhao Yuan, he revealed an expression as if he had expected this. He had long since guessed that Yi Xing still had a backup plan, and wouldn't be defeated so easily. All of this was within his expectations. Zhao Yuan possessed the martial path divine eye, and his eyesight was extremely powerful. He was naturally able to see the strengths and weaknesses of Tu Qianzhong's moves. He also understood that Yi Xing's counterattack just now was because he had found the weakness of Tu Qianzhong's moves. However, he was still very puzzled. He didn't know how Yi Xing had found the weakness of Tu Qianzhong's moves. It was extremely difficult to see the weakness of another's moves. Unless one's strength far surpassed one's, it would be relatively easy to see the weakness in two different worlds. For instance, there was a huge gap between a king and a quasi-god. A quasi-god could clearly see everything in a king's attack. However, even if they were both kings, even if one side was a powerful peerless emperor, and the other was only an initial king, the former would still find it extremely difficult to see everything in the latter's attack. Yi Xing's counterattack was beyond Tu Qianzhang's expectations. However, Tu Qianzhang's reaction speed was also extremely fast. As soon as Yi Xing rushed out of blood cloud obscuring the heavens, Tu Qianzhang decisively changed his position. Even though Yi Xing's attack was as fast as teleportation, no matter how fast he teleported, time did not stop or reverse. Tu Qianzhang had been prepared in advance, so Yi Xing's attack naturally missed. Yi Xing's martial path Heavenly Eye had the ability to scan the superbrain. It was much stronger than the heavenly eyes of other martial artists. Tu Qianzhang's movements were indeed extremely fast, but they couldn't escape Yi Xing's eyes. Whoosh! After Yi Xing's attack failed, his next attack was like teleportation. His scarlet flame bow was like a blade, slashing horizontally at Tu Qianzhang. Yi Xing's attack was too fast. Moreover, the angle and timing of his attack were flawless. Tu Qianzhang couldn't react in time, and could only retreat once more. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Yi Xing used speed to attack speed. His bowstring slashed horizontally like a blade, rapidly attacking Tu Qianzhang. This extreme speed gave Tu Qianzhang no time to prepare. He was also caught unprepared and constantly retreated. If Yi Xing continued to attack like this and Tu Qianzhang didn't have any other methods to deal with it, he could completely suppress Tu Qianzhang until he was blasted off the stage. Against Gao Jian and Zheng Haoyu, Yi Xing would use this method. However, against Tu Qianzhang he wouldn't. If Tu Qianzhang had the upper hand, he definitely wouldn't end this battle so easily. Instead, he would find an opportunity to heavily injure Yi Xing. Now that Yi Xing had the upper hand, he didn't want Tu Qianzhang to safely retreat. After a certain move, Yi Xing suddenly drew back, no longer continuing to attack Tu Qianzhang. Just as he was about to be forced off the stage by Yi Xing suddenly drew back and stopped his attack. Tu Qianzhang was surprised at first, but then he was overjoyed. Just as Tu Qianzhang's joy reached its peak, and he was preparing to counterattack Yi Xing, he suddenly felt a terrifying sense of danger. He saw that Yi Xing, who had retreated to the other side of the stage, had already drawn back his scarlet flame bow. An astral arrow condensed. When the arrow was combined with the arrow, the sharp momentum that broke through the vault of heaven was unstoppable and daunting. Tu Qianzhang's complexion changed. He was about to face the strongest attack he had faced since his battle with Yi Xing whoosh. Just as this thought appeared in Tu Qianzhang's mind, Yi Xing's arrow had already left the bowstring and shot out explosively. The arrow released by the Black Shadow Windfire art contained the 3 yuan qis of darkness, wind and fire. It was also strengthened by the arrow intent, causing its penetrative power and destructive power to increase greatly. Even for a 4-star king, this arrow could be said to be terrifying. Most importantly, the arrow's speed was so fast that it ignored the passage of time. At this moment, Tu Qianzhang felt as if time had stopped. The surrounding space was as viscous as water, making it impossible for him to dodge at his fastest speed. However, the black flame arrow was like a flash of light, shooting in front of him. Tu Qianzhang wanted to dodge, but he couldn't react in time. The arrow hit his body. Puff! Spitting out a large mouthful of blood, Tu Qianzhang was instantly sent flying by the arrow and fell off the stage. In the final battle, Yi Xing won. He became the only disciple who had won all the battles in the 10th Peak's new disciple competition. The first place belonged to Yi Xing. Chapter 786. Mo Qingyang said, "The Star Secret Realm has existed for a long time. Even a true god expert can't break the seal inside. It's obvious that it's a treasure left behind by a supreme being." Mo Qingyang paused when he said this. Supreme martial artist, the true pinnacle of martial arts. When Yi Xing and the others heard this, their hearts skipped a beat. They were somewhat excited. It's hard to imagine how rich and precious the treasures left behind by a supreme martial artist are. However, no one has ever been able to obtain all the treasures in the Star Secret Realm. Luo Tiangong is the one who has obtained the most treasures in the Star Secret Realm. However, after Luo Tiangong died, he didn't leave his harvest to the world. Instead, he hid it in a starry continent and was buried there as well. That's the Heavenly Bao continent. Luo Tiangong sealed the entire Heavenly Bao continent. Even a true god expert can't enter. If they forcefully enter and break the seal, the entire Heavenly Bao continent will be destroyed. However, Luo Tiangong didn't go to the extreme. He left 3 entrances that only intermediate kings and below can pass through. These 3 entrances are connected to the 3 high-class continents of the flowing light world. There's one entrance in the Dark Star continent. The other 2 entrances are in the Star River continent and the Radiance continent. Peak Master are there 5-star sects in the other 2 high-class continents? Someone asked. Mo Qingyang nodded and said, the Star River Divine Palace and the Radiance Divine Palace are forces that are on par with the Dark Star Divine Palace. Every 100 years, the 3 entrances to the Heavenly Bao continent will open. Therefore, it's not only the outer disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace who will enter. The elite outer disciples of the Star River Divine Palace and the Radiance Divine Palace will also enter to explore. To be able to rank in the top 10 of the 10th peak, the disciples present were the elites of the elites. In the 10th peak, they were already at the peak. Naturally, they were looking forward to seeing the elite outer disciples of the other sections. Mo Qingyang could see the anticipation on everyone's face. He said, the relationship between the 3 divine palaces isn't very harmonious. If you meet in the Heavenly Bao continent, it's normal to have a life and death battle. If you meet the disciples of the other 2 divine palaces, you must be careful. In the past 20,000 years, the 3 5-star powerhouses of the flowing light world had already sent their outer disciples into the Heavenly Bao continent about 200 times. Some of them had obtained Xian-grade treasures, while others had obtained God-grade treasures. However, these were only the lucky few, as most of them had entered the Heavenly Bao continent with nothing. Furthermore, as time passed, the number of treasures obtained from the Heavenly Bao continent decreased. That meant that the Heavenly Bao continent was almost fully explored. However, no one had discovered Luo Tiangong's true inheritance yet. His supreme-grade god weapon, godly eye technique, and supreme-grade divine level technique from the Star Secret Realm still existed in the Heavenly Bao continent. Clearly, the true center of the burial ground, the treasure area, has not been found yet. This is a chance for you latecomers. I wish you good luck. Whatever treasures you find in the Heavenly Bao continent, you will have to hand them over to the temple. The temple will exchange half the value of the treasures for contribution points. The better the treasure, the higher the contribution points. With enough contribution points, you can exchange for any treasures you need from the temple. Although they would only get half the contribution points if they handed over the treasures they obtained to the temple, they were still very excited. 4 low-level kings, supreme-grade mystic-level treasures were already something that could only be found by chance. As for god-level treasures, they were just legends. A supreme-grade mystic-level treasure was several times more valuable than a supreme-grade mystic-level treasure. In other words, if they obtained a supreme-grade mystic-level treasure in the Heavenly Bao continent and handed it over to the Dark Star Temple, even if they only got half the contribution points, they would still be able to exchange for 2 to 3 supreme-grade mystic-level treasures. As for god-level treasures, their value was even higher. A low-grade god-level treasure was worth more than 10 supreme-grade mystic-level treasures. This meant that if they obtained a low-grade god-level treasure, they would be able to exchange for at least 5 supreme-grade mystic-level treasures. Half the contribution points might seem like they had lost half of their gains, but in fact, it was already an extremely high return. If they did not enter the Heavenly Bao continent, it would be extremely difficult for a mere low-level king to obtain a supreme-grade mystic-level treasure, let alone a god-level treasure. Being able to enter the Heavenly Bao continent was a great opportunity in itself. It was a potential gain for a disciple of the temple. Therefore, it was fair to hand over half of everything they obtained in the Heavenly Bao continent to the temple. The next day, the peak master of the 10th peak, Mo Qingyang, brought Yixing and the other top 10 disciples of the 10th peak to the plaza of the Dark Star Temple's main hall. The Dark Star Temple had hundreds of thousands of disciples and occupied an area of 10,000 miles. Although the 10 peaks of the outer court had an area of more than 1,000 miles, it was only a small area of the temple. It was not even 1/10 of the temple's area. If a powerhouse who could see 10,000 miles looked down from the sky, he would realize that the Dark Star Temple's main hall was located in the center of the temple. The Dark Star Temple's main hall was more than 1,000 meters tall and more than 1,000 feet wide. It was extremely majestic and looked more imposing than an ordinary mountain. The plaza outside the main hall was even more spacious. It was about 10,000 meters long and wide. In the center of the plaza, there was a statue that was 1,000 meters tall. The statue was holding a black long spear and had pitch-black eyes. It was the founder of the Dark Star Temple, the Dark Star Emperor. It was Yixing's first time seeing such a majestic main hall and such a spacious plaza. It was also his first time seeing such a majestic statue. He was amazed. The disciples of the 10th peak were all from mid-level continents. Like Yixing, it was their first time seeing such a scene. They were amazed. On the plaza, the disciples of the other 9 peaks arrived one after another under the leadership of the peak masters. Most of these disciples were from 5-star clans. The 4-star and 5-star clans of the Dark Star continent were influenced by the style of the Dark Star Temple. The main hall of the clans was extremely majestic. When they arrived, they were only slightly surprised before they returned to normal. Most of the disciples from the 1st peak to the 9th peak glanced at the disciples of the 10th peak with a smile on their faces. It was like a group of superior people looking at the Aborigines. These martial artists who were born and raised in the Dark Star continent had a sense of superiority in their bones towards the disciples from mid-level continents. Yixing felt something in his heart. A sharp gaze locked onto him, and he immediately turned to look. It was a disciple of the 1st peak. He was a young man in purple with an arrogant face. He looked at Yixing with a cold gaze. Yixing had once negotiated with this person at Enlightenment Mountain. It was Xuezi. Xuezi was a top disciple of the 1st peak. It was not strange for him to be ranked in the top 10. Yixing frowned slightly. He had almost sealed Xuezi in the depths of his memory. However, from Xuezi's gaze he could see that more than half a year had passed. He was still holding a grudge against him for the unpleasant negotiation at Enlightenment Mountain. Chapter 787. Xuezi smiled coldly when he saw Yixing looking at him. He said, "The 10th peak is full of good-for-nothings. A mere 9th-star supremacy is actually ranked in the top 10. Ha! If it was the 1st peak, even the disciple ranked in the top 1,000 could easily crush him." Even in front of Peak Master Emo Qingyang, Xuezi still mocked him. He, Xuezi, was a 5-star blue life. In the future, he would definitely become a quasi-god 5 nirvana. With the lifespan of a quasi-god and the strength of his family, he could almost certainly become a quasi-god 6 nirvana. If he encountered some opportunities, he might even have a chance to become a true god. Moreover, the Xue family's old ancestor was a true god expert and an inner elder of the Dark Star Divine Palace. Due to various factors, Xuezi's status was much higher than the other outer sect disciples. That was why she dared to mock the disciples of the 10th peak in front of Emo Qingyang. The 10th peak only recruited disciples from mid-tier continents. Since the establishment of the Dark Star Divine Palace, it had been tens of thousands of years, but the 10th peak had never produced a true god realm expert. In the Dark Star Divine Palace, only true god experts were considered to be in the upper echelons. From the 1st peak to the 9th peak, there would always be 1 or 2 true god experts every few hundred or thousand years. From this, it was clear that the 10th summit's peak master was not a good position. Emo Qingyang was a royal clan quasi-god. However, he was assigned to the 10th summit's peak master. His position in the clan was clearly very ordinary. With Emo Qingyang's status, it was hard for him to do anything to a disciple like Xuezi. Xuezi's words immediately drew a wave of laughter. To be able to rank in the top 10 among the disciples of the various peaks, which one of them did not come from an illustrious background, Many of them had true God experts in their families, and they were all 5-star families. The status of these disciples was not much lower than Shuizi, and some of them were even more prominent than Shuizi. Naturally, they would laugh without any scruples. Junior brother Qin Yang, after you took over the 10th peak, the disciples under you are really getting worse and worse. The first peak's master, Mo Wendao, lightly smiled as he spoke. Among the outer sect's 10 peaks, the first peak had given birth to the most true God powerhouses, and had always been the most outstanding bloodline. For Mo Wendao to be able to become the first peak's peak lord, his position was rather prominent. Although he couldn't be compared to a true God powerhouse, Mo Wendao was definitely one of the best among quasi-gods. One was the peak master of the first peak, while the other was the peak master of the 10th peak. Mo Wendao and Mo Qingyang had completely different statuses. Moreover, Mo Wendao was a 6th nirvana quasi-god, while Mo Qingyang was a 5th nirvana quasi-god. In terms of cultivation, Mo Wendao was superior. It was no secret that Mo Wendao and Mo Qingyang did not have a good relationship. This was also an important reason why Shuizi dared to mock the 10th summit without restraint. In the past, Mo Qingyang would have been livid. However, this time, Yixing and 9-star supremacy was a heaven-defying genius. Thus, Mo Qingyang was very happy to have such a disciple. In response to Mo Wendao's accusation, Mo Qingyang felt a sense of satisfaction as if saying, "What do you know?" The corners of Mo Qingyang's mouth curled up slightly. Although he kept a low profile, he did not reveal too much joy in his heart. Yixing was born in a medium continent, but he had such heaven-defying strength. Mo Qingyang knew very well that Yixing must have had great opportunities. If such a person did not die, he or she would usually have great luck. In the heavenly Bao continent, one's strength was not proportional to one's gains. Luck was the biggest factor in one's gains. Cultivators with great luck usually had good luck. Thus, Mo Qingyang had high hopes for Yixing's trip to the heavenly Bao continent. He wanted to wait until the team left the heavenly Bao continent. If Yixing's gains were the most bountiful, then he would release all the joy in his heart and slap Mo Wendao in the face. The disciples of the 10th summit did not think as far as Mo Qingyang. They were furious at the mockery of the disciples of the other 9 summits. In the 10th summit, they all had their own competition, and did not have a harmonious relationship. However, in the entire outer sect, they were a whole. They were all disciples from medium continents, and faced the mockery of the local disciples of the Dark Star continent. They had the same experiences and the same anger. Gao Jian was the one who could not hold back his anger. He said, "Senior brother from the first summit, you are wrong. Although senior brother Yixing is a 9-star supremacy, it does not mean that senior brother Yixing is weak. Senior brother Yixing is the strongest among the disciples of the 10th summit. He is invincible among the 3-star kings. How many of the top 10 disciples of the first summit can defeat an invincible 3-star king? You said that the disciple of the first summit who is ranked 1000 can easily defeat senior brother Yixing, haha. I know that the disciples of the first summit are very outstanding, but don't brag too much. It will make people laugh." Yixing's position was completely confirmed after he defeated Tu Qianzhang, and took first place in the 10th summit's grand competition. During the grand competition, most of the disciples of the 10th summit did not think highly of Yixing. No one was willing to call Yixing, a 9-star supremacy, senior brother. However, Yixing had used his actual battle results to prove that he was the strongest among the disciples of the 10th summit. Strength was respected in the martial Tao. Yixing was ranked first, so he was the eldest senior brother of the 10th summit. Once his position was confirmed, the disciples of the 10th summit naturally changed the way they addressed Yixing. When they mentioned Yixing, they would add the word senior brother. Even the elite disciples who were ranked in the top 10 were no exception. Gao Jian's words surprised the disciples of the other 9 summits. This 9-star supremacy was the strongest among the disciples of the 10th summit. The 10th summit was the summit that had the least presence among the 10 summits of the outer court. The other 9 summits did not pay much attention to the 10th summit. Moreover, the results of the grand competition were announced yesterday. No one cared who had taken first place or who was in the top 10. This was because, according to the previous competitions, the top 10 of the 10th summit would have at most 1 or 2 4-star kings. However, the top 10 of the other 9 summits would have at least 5 or 6 4-star kings. It would be difficult for the 10th summit's first place to enter the top 5 among the other 9 summits. If one were to count the entire outer court 10 summits, the 10th summit's first place would not even be able to enter the top 40. Such a level would naturally be ignored and ignored. Even in this competition, the strength of the 10th summit's first place did not matter to the other 9 summits. After all, it was not a big deal. Therefore, no one cared who was first. However, when they found out that it was Yi Xing, a 9-star supremacy, who had taken first place in the competition of the 10th summit, the martial artists of the other 9 summits finally cared. A 9-star supremacy was only at the 9th level of the astral reaching realm. He had yet to break through to the astral sea realm and become a king. In the other 9 summits, all the disciples were kings. Even the weakest were kings. There was not a single astral reaching supremacy among the disciples of the first summit to the 9th summit, which one of them did not view astral reaching supremacy as ants. However, the ant in their eyes was actually the strongest of the 10th summit. How could a 9-star supremacy have such a heaven-defying strength? Everyone was shocked. This was unbelievable. Chapter 788. Xuezi stared at Yi Xing in shock, her gaze fixed on him. He had never expected Yi Xing to possess such heaven-defying strength. He was already surprised to see Yi Xing in the top 10 of the 10th peak. Even though he thought that Yi Xing was at the end of the top 10, it still proved that Yi Xing's strength was at least at the level of a 3-star king. A 9-star supremacy possessing the strength of a 3-star king was already abnormal enough. In the history of the Dark Star Divine Palace, there were very few people who possessed such strength. If he was the number 1 disciple of the 10th peak, his strength would be even higher. He would probably possess the strength of a 4-star king. Xuezi possessed the strength of a 4-star king. However, he was a 3-star king, the elite of the elites of the first peak. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the number 1 disciple of the first peak was the number 1 disciple of the entire outer sect. Even if he wasn't the strongest, he would definitely be one of the best. Such an existence was enough to look down on all the low-level kings. There were very few people in the entire outer sect who could catch his eye. Originally, Yi Xing was just a little worm in Xuezi's eyes. Now that he suddenly knew that Yi Xing was actually a real dragon, this huge contrast shocked Xuezi. He found it hard to believe. Xuezi stared at Gao Jian and said, "You're lying. He's only a 9-star supremacy. How can he be number 1? This is impossible. Impossible." Xuezi's tone was agitated. Many disciples had the same thought as Xuezi. They found it hard to believe. As for the disciples of the 10th summit, they could not help but lift their heads, because what Gao Jian said was the truth, the absolute truth. Seeing the disbelief in the eyes of the disciples of the other 9 peaks, the disciples of the 10th peak finally felt a sense of relief. The 10th peak master, Mo Qingyang, said, "Gao Jian is right. Yi Xing is indeed the number 1 disciple of the 10th peak." Given Mo Qingyang's status and cultivation, it was impossible for him to lie. Since he had spoken, it was obvious that what Gao Jian had said was true. Some of the disciples from the other 9 peaks were astonished, while others had ashen faces. In retrospect, their mocking remarks just now were nothing short of ironic. This was especially true for Xuezi. He was the one who had mocked Yi Xing. This feeling of mockery was the strongest, and it made him angry. Xuezi pointed at the disciples of the 10th peak and shouted, "Trash! The disciples of the 10th peak are all trash. Otherwise, how could a 9th-star venerable lord become number 1? There is only one reason, and that is that you are too weak, too trash." The disciples of the 10th summit were furious. Xuezi had said that the 10th summit was full of trash. She was just mocking them. But now, she was pointing at the top 10 disciples of the 10th summit and calling them trash. It was a completely different feeling. Mo Qingyang's face turned ugly. Xuezi had gone overboard. If she had only spoken sarcastically, Mo Qingyang wouldn't have bothered to fight with Mo Wendao. But now he couldn't bear it anymore. Just as Mo Qingyang was about to get angry, an extremely horrifying aura suddenly descended. The surrounding void suddenly froze. Be it the kings or the quasi-gods, they all felt suffocated. It was as if the void had solidified, making it impossible for them to breathe or move. This horrifying aura only existed for a blink of an eye before disappearing. Everyone felt the air flow in the void again, and they could breathe again. At this moment, everyone noticed a middle-aged man in black robes standing in the void in front of them. No one knew where this middle-aged man in black robes came from. They only knew that they couldn't move or breathe earlier. They were so shocked that even their thoughts seemed to have stopped. By the time they could breathe again and their thoughts were smooth, this middle-aged man in black robes was already standing in the void in front of them. This was a true God expert. This thought flashed through the minds of all the disciples. They had seen quasi-gods before. They could restrain their aura like a mortal and release it like a thunderstorm. However, no matter how strong a quasi-god's aura was, it wasn't as horrifying as the one they had faced in the blink of an eye. Clearly, only a true God expert could have such a horrifying aura that could seal space. Great-grandfather. When Xuezi saw this middle-aged man in black robes, she was overjoyed and immediately cheered. The 10 peak masters from the first peak to the 10th peak also looked serious. They cupped their fists and bowed to the middle-aged man in black robes. Greetings, Elder Nan. The peak masters of the outer sect had a higher status than the elders of the outer sect. Therefore, these 10 peak masters definitely couldn't ask the elders of the outer sect to bow. It was obvious that this middle-aged man in black robes was an inner sect elder. Only true God experts could become an inner sect elder of the Dark Star Temple. Xuezi called this middle-aged man in black robes great-grandfather. Clearly, this true God expert was from the Xue family. The Xue family only had one true God expert, Xueyinan. Xueyinan looked like he was only about 40 years old. In fact, he had lived for more than 16,000 years. A true God expert's lifespan was 30,000 years. 16,000 years old was the peak of his prime. Xueyinan looked around and nodded slightly to the 10 peak masters. He waved his hand, and a void-crossing divine boat appeared. He said, "This time, I will send you to the entrance of the heavenly Bao continent. Get on the divine boat." When Xueyinan's gaze landed on Xuezi, it was no different from the other outer sect disciples. He had lived for more than 16,000 years. His sons, grandsons, and even great-grandsons had all turned to dust. He had seen generations of geniuses in his family grow. However, in the end none of them became true gods. Some died in the middle of their cultivation, and some died of old age after a few thousand years. A person who had lived for such a long time had no family by his side. He had even passed the stage of missing them. His heart was already as calm as water. Unless there was a genius in his family who had a high chance of becoming a true god, Xueyinan would look at him differently. Otherwise, he wouldn't pay attention to him. In Xueyinan's heart, the only difference between his family members and other martial artists was that he didn't care about the life and death of other martial artists. However, he would slightly pay attention to the life and death of the Xue family members. As such, unless the Xue family members were in life-threatening danger, and it was the life and death of an important person in the family, Xueyinan would only pay attention to them. Other than that, he was no different from other martial artists. As for the young man who called him great-grandfather, he naturally couldn't be bothered to look at him. As a five-star family, the Xue family had a long history. Just Xueyinan's bloodline alone had split into countless branches and tens of thousands of people. In addition, there were also Xueyinan's brothers, cousins, and clansmen. The total number of people was more than 10 million. The number of people who called him great-grandfather was uncountable. How could he look at them one by one? Chapter 791. Xuezi stared at Yixing, wanting to see fear in Yixing's eyes. However, he was disappointed. Yixing's expression was calm as usual. Xuezi exuded a terrifying aura as he said slowly, "You should be afraid." Xuezi was also a 3-star king, but his aura was much more powerful than Tu Qianzhang and Zheng Haoyu's. Just his aura alone created an invisible force field, causing the surrounding void to distort. The terrifying aura surged toward Yixing with a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In the void, the airflow could be seen moving with the naked eye, creating turbulent and surging airwaves. If it was another 9-star venerable lord, they might not even be able to stand steadily in the turbulent airwaves. However, Yixing's figure did not move at all. With the arrow intent attached to his body was like an arrow with terrifying penetrative power. The turbulent airwaves hit Yixing's body like a balloon hitting the tip of a needle. There was no effect other than the airwaves shattering. Yixing's black hair fluttered in the airwaves, and his expression was calm as he said, "Shuizi, your great ancestor personally told me to avoid killing fellow disciples in the Heavenly Bao continent. You even dare to disobey the words of a true god powerhouse. You're really bold." Shuizi took Yixing's words as fear and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Yixing, you're really afraid. Ha. However, you want to use my great ancestor as a shield? No way. If I kill you today, who will know? You're just an insignificant person from a mid-level continent. Who will care about your life and death? You can rest assured that if you die in the Heavenly Bao continent, no one will care about how you die. No one will even mention you." Yixing shrugged and said, "What if I kill you?" Shuizi was stunned and then laughed. "What did you say? You kill me? Oh. Yixing, you're a mere 9th-star exalt, yet you dare say that you can kill me? I, Shuizi, am the #1 disciple of the first peak. Do you think that I'll be as useless as that good-for-nothing from the 10th peak?" Yixing said indifferently, "That depends on how you compare. Compared to them, you are naturally stronger. But in front of me, perhaps you are just a piece of trash. Perhaps you can't even withstand a single blow?" "Enough!" Shuizi shouted angrily. He couldn't bear to listen to Yixing's words any longer. "Yixing, don't try to win a battle of words here. There's no need to stall for time. Since you dare to go against me, Shuizi, you're doomed to die today. Even God can't save you." Whoosh! As she spoke, a beam of starlight shot out from between Shuizi's eyebrows and turned into a lightning star. This was a purple lightning astral image. Purple lightning flashed, revealing a terrifying aura that made one's heart palpitate. It was the Thunder Saint level astral form, the Thunder Punishment astral form. The Thunder astral form was extremely good at attacking. Among the same level of astral forms, its attacking power was the most ferocious. A Saint-level Thunder astral form was definitely one of the top Saint-level astral forms. The Thunder Punishment astral form was one of the main reasons why Shuizi was so strong. The Thunder Punishment astral form rained down purple lightning energy that contained the power of life and death. It was terrifying. Shuizi's body was also overflowing with electricity as she circulated the high mystic level Purple Thunder Manual. The 6th level of the Purple Thunder Manual had extremely powerful lightning astral energy. Together with the Thunder Punishment astral form, it made it easy for Shuizi to challenge those with a higher level. 99% of 4-star kings were no match for Shuizi. Only the top 4-star kings had the strength to contend with Shuizi. In the Dark Star Godly Palace, there were no more than 3 people who had the strength of a top 4-star king. Shuizi was one of them. This was the reason why Shuizi was so proud. He was qualified to look down on any disciple of the 10th peak. According to the past, the top disciple of the 10th peak would only have the strength of a normal 4-star king. Even when they were strong, they would only have the strength of a middle 4-star king. As for the strength of a late 4-star king, there had only been 4 or 5 times in the past 100,000 years. This was a chance that only happened once every 10,000 years. Even if Yixing was really the strongest disciple of the 10th peak in the past 10,000 years, and had the strength of a late 4-star king, Shuizi still didn't think much of him. In Shuizi's opinion, no matter what, he was the side that would win. There was no way he could lose in killing Yixing. Go to hell. Shuizi took out an upper mystic weapon sword and waved it. Lightning astral energy, lightning yuan qi, lightning aura, purple lightning astral energy. All kinds of energy gathered in this sword, and released an extremely bright lightning sword energy. The lightning sword energy twisted like a purple dragon. Wherever it passed, The earth cracked and the void shattered. It carried a destructive aura as it attacked Yixing. The power of this sword energy was several times stronger than Tu Qianzhang's and Zheng Haoyu's full power attack. Facing this sword energy, there were very few 4-star kings who could block it. Yixing had already used the fire star form and 3 heaven and earth auras. Dark Yuan Qi, Fire Yuan Qi, and Wind Yuan Qi gathered outside his body and formed a black flame whirlpool. The upper mystic weapon, Red Flame Bow, appeared in Yixing's hand. Activating the Dark Wind Fire Arrow incantation, Yixing's strength exploded to the limit as he waved the Red Flame Bow and drew out a black hole whirlpool. The black hole whirlpool contained a terrifying devouring power. The arrow intent shuttled through the whirlpool at high speed, shattering any objects or energy that were sucked into the black hole whirlpool. Boom boom boom. The lightning sword energy fell into the black hole whirlpool and let out a terrifying explosion. A large portion of the lightning sword energy was shattered and disintegrated by the black hole whirlpool. However, Shuezi's sword energy seemed to have endless power. The twisted lightning sword energy was continuously waved out. The earth and void in front of it cracked as the terrifying power surged forward like a tsunami. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the black hole whirlpool exploded, and a terrifying shockwave rushed out in all directions. The lightning sword energy's power was too terrifying. The black hole whirlpool couldn't withstand it at all. The lightning sword energy was like a dancing dragon. It shattered the black hole whirlpool and ruthlessly slashed down at Yixing whoosh. Yixing's arrow intent was attached to his body. Using his body as an arrow, he instantly pierced through the void and appeared 100 miles away. At this moment, the lightning sword energy slashed out dozens of miles. The mountain peak was flattened, and a huge fissure that was hundreds of meters deep appeared on the ground. The sword energy's power was indeed terrifying, but in the end, it missed and couldn't touch Yixing. Shuezi frowned. Yixing's speed was unexpectedly fast. It was beyond his expectations. With arrow intent attached to your body, your speed is indeed very fast. However, how many of my attacks can you dodge? Shuezi shouted coldly, and a sharp aura burst out from his body. Suddenly, a Nihility Chi sword burst out from his body. It was sword intent. Using sword intent, Shuezi's aura rose to another level. Chapter 792. The penetrating power of the arrow intent was strong, but the sword intent was even sharper. Shuezi's sword intent was attached to his body, and the void outside his body instantly shattered. Shuezi's body was like a peerless sword, extremely sharp. He moved at extreme speed, and the void airflow had almost no resistance to him. Kill! Shuezi rapidly approached Yixing and waved his sword again. The lightning sword aura burst out, containing the sword intent, and its destructive power was even more terrifying. In the distance, Yixing had just pulled open the crimson flame bow, condensing it into a black flame arrow and shooting it out. The lightning sword aura slashed down, and the black flame arrow was instantly split in half. The sword aura's momentum did not decrease, and it continued to attack Yixing. Yixing's current strength was not ordinary among 4-star kings, but it was not too powerful either. He could not be compared to the peak 4-star kings, so naturally, he was not Shuezi's opponent. Whoosh! Yixing could only attach the arrow intent to his body, and use the momentum of the wind to the extreme, using his extreme speed to dodge. In just a breath's time, Shuezi had attacked more than 10 times, and all of them were dodged by Yixing. The two retreated as they fought, and they had already retreated more than 200 miles. Your body is only made of flesh and blood after all. I want to see how many times you can use the arrow intent to travel through the void. Shuezi sneered. The reason why the arrow could have such a high speed after leaving the bow was because the bow's power was strong enough. When the bow shot the arrow's speed would naturally increase greatly, but the arrow itself would also have to bear the power. Therefore, a strong bow needed a good arrow. If the quality of the arrow was too low, the arrow would not be able to bear the power, and it would explode before hitting the target. With the arrow will attached to the body was like an arrow. Naturally, the speed was incomparably fast, as if it was teleporting. However, in this process, the body was like the arrow, bearing a huge amount of force. If there was a slight mistake, such as the force bearing exceeded the body's limit, the body would explode like the arrow. The reason why Yi Xing could travel through the void with the arrow intent was because of his strong physical body. However, there was a limit to the strength of his physical body. After a few times, he couldn't take it anymore. Therefore, even though Yi Xing was as fast as teleportation and constantly dodged Xuezi's lightning swords, Xuezi was not angry. Instead, she was very happy. He knew very well that Yi Xing's speed could not be maintained indefinitely. Another breath of time passed. Yi Xing was still dodging as fast as before, but he could already feel a tearing pain coming from his body. The strength that his body could withstand had already reached a critical point. Xuezi stood in the air with purple lightning surrounding his body. He looked like a thunder god. The thunder punishment astral form poured down a torrent of thunder and lightning astral power, giving him endless power. Every sword attack was at the peak of his power. You can't take it anymore, right? Then die. Xuezi saw through Yi Xing's background and her expression was filled with excitement and joy. You're the one who forced me. Yi Xing's eyes suddenly shone brightly. He shouted, I've tolerated you time and time again. You're the one who's seeking your own death. Whoosh, as he spoke, a starlight rushed out from Yi Xing's forehead and turned into a huge bow that floated in the air. The bow was made up of countless small stars, revealing a surging penetrative power. It was the Sagittarius constellation. As Yi Xing's horizons broadened, he became more aware of the scarcity and preciousness of constellations. Even in the Dark Star Temple, Yi Xing had never heard of anyone possessing a constellation. In the Dark Star Temple, Yi Xing had also read some common martial arts manuals. Generally speaking, most of the kings had the extreme grade astral form. Quasi-gods had the extreme grade astral form, and the saint grade astral form. True gods all had the saint grade astral form. As for the extreme grade astral form, no matter where it was a legend. Therefore, after arriving at the Dark Star Temple, Yi Xing warned himself not to use the black hole astral form and the Sagittarius constellation unless it was absolutely necessary. But now, Yi Xing had been forced to a dead end by Xuezi. It was impossible for Xuezi to stop. If he didn't use the extreme grade astral form, Yi Xing would only end up dead. Therefore, Yi Xing had no other choice but to use the extreme grade astral form. And Yi Xing used the Sagittarius constellation, which meant that he would kill Xuezi and not leave her alive. Xuezi's mouth curled up. He wanted to sneer at Yi Xing's anger. However, when Yi Xing used the Sagittarius constellation, Xuezi's smile froze on his face before he could even laugh. His pupils dilated, and his heart trembled. As a disciple of a five-star family, Xuezi naturally knew what the Sagittarius constellation represented. 10,000 flames thunder. Using the Sagittarius constellation, Yi Xing immediately felt a surge of power. He waved the crimson flame bow, bringing out a terrifying flaming bow shadow. The explosion shook the heavens. The unstoppable lightning sword aura collided with the flaming bow shadow, causing a huge explosion. The surging waves of air rushed out 10 miles in an instant. A layer of the ground was shaved off by the force, and sand and stones flew everywhere. The flaming bow shadow and the lightning sword aura were both destroyed. This attack was evenly matched. However, Xuezi's face turned green in an instant. Her eyes revealed a trace of shock. Xuezi had already exploded with her peak strength, but Yi Xing had only used the bow and had yet to draw it. Xuezi obviously knew that the terrifying part of an archer expert was the arrow, and not the strength of the bow. The stronger the bow, the more terrifying the arrow would be. Whoosh! Without giving Xuezi time to think, Yi Xing instantly drew the bow. A layer of black flame ripples burst out, instantly cutting the space within 10 miles in half. Xuezi was in a state of shock. Facing such a fast attack, she was shocked and flustered. Her body immediately retreated, and at the same time, she waved her sword. The lightning sword aura danced like a divine dragon, and destroyed the black flame ripples. At this moment, an extremely penetrating aura suddenly enveloped Xuezi, causing her face to instantly turn pale. When Xuezi retreated, Yi Xing also retreated, and drew the crimson flame bow again. This time, Yixing did not instantly release the bow, but drew it into a full moon. On the bowstring, the arrow intense star aura, darkness, wind, and fire elemental energies gathered. When Shuizi slashed the black flame ripples, the black flame arrow on the crimson flame bow had already condensed and locked onto Shuizi. The aura from the black flame arrow made Shuizi's heart tremble. This was definitely an extremely terrifying arrow. Whoosh! The black flame arrow instantly left the bowstring. In the blink of an eye, Shuizi's face turned pale. The arrow had left the bowstring in an instant. Shuizi knew that she could not block the arrow's speed, so she quickly dodged to the side. However, the void had become sticky at this moment. She felt that the air was like water, and the resistance had greatly increased. The speed in the air was completely different from the speed in the water. Shuizi's reaction was a moment slower. Chapter 793. Whoosh! The black flame arrow arrived in an instant and shot into Shuizi's head. The terrifying power contained in the arrow exploded in an instant. Shuizi's body was the body of a king, and the hardness of his skull was comparable to a mid-grade dark weapon. However, the terrifying power still blasted a fist-sized hole in his head, and one of his eyes was gone. Shuizi's vitality was very strong, and he was not instantly killed by this terrifying attack. His other eye was filled with fear and disbelief. Sagittarius constellation. Initial form of binding space. How is this possible? Shuizi's voice was filled with fear as he muttered a few words. The color of life in his eyes quickly faded away, and with extreme unwillingness and shock he died. His body fell from the sky and landed on the ground. There was no longer any sign of life. Although he killed Shuizi, Yixing's mental vigilance did not decrease. His senses were very sensitive, especially after using the Sagittarius constellation. His aura was even more sensitive, and he felt that someone was watching him. At this moment, the sky suddenly surged like boiling water. A ray of light bloomed from a certain point, and instantly expanded, covering the entire sky. A line of words appeared from the point of light, and instantly became bigger, and stretched across the sky. Young man, I'll be waiting for you in the heavenly bow hall. Yixing was shocked. What's going on? Is this something you're saying to me? Yixing was both shocked and confused. He did not understand what was going on. At this moment, tens of thousands of miles away, on the peak of a mountain, Huyanlong suddenly retracted her gaze and closed her eyes. 2 lines of blood tears flowed from her eyes. Just now, she used her eye technique to watch the battle between Yixing and Shuizi. Very few people knew that Huyanlong and Shuizi were engaged. When their martial arts potential reached the end, and their cultivation reached its peak, they would get married. Huyanlong was clear about Shuizi's plan, so she used her eye technique to watch the battle from afar. However, in the end, it was Shuizi who was defeated and died in the Yellow Springs. Not only was Shuizi in disbelief, Huyanlong was also in disbelief. Yixing killed her fiancé, so Huyanlong hated Yixing to the extreme. However, after Shuizi's death, a ray of light suddenly bloomed in the sky. The light was so resplendent and dazzling that in an instant, Shuizi felt intense pain in her eyes. She quickly retracted her gaze and closed her eyes, but she was still injured. Yixing, you actually have the Sagittarius constellation. You really hid it well. Unfortunately, this secret was still discovered by me. Just you wait, I will definitely make sure you have no burial place. I will definitely. 2 lines of bloody tears hung on his face. Huyanlong cursed in his heart. At the same time, in the most central region of the heavenly bow continent, the earth split open, mountains crumbled, and the earth in a radius of 10,000 li shook and was leveled. An ancient palace rose from the crack in the earth and appeared on the ground. The palace was more than 1,000 meters tall, and more than 1,000 feet in both length and width. Its grandeur was even greater than the main hall of the Dark Star Temple. A surging wave spread out in all directions with the ancient palace as the center. At this moment, all the martial artists in the entire heavenly bow continent felt the wave. Yixing also felt it, but his eyes were fixed on the sky. He stared at the line of words without blinking. Could it be These words are really meant for me? Where is the Heavenly Bao Palace? Who is waiting for me? What kind of existence has such means to create such a scene in the sky? Yixing was puzzled and puzzled. In the sky, the line of words existed for 2 breaths of time before it shrunk and disappeared. It returned to its original position. At this moment, the strong light that enveloped the entire sky dimmed. Yixing's expression changed as he suddenly made a discovery. As the strong light gradually dimmed and the area shrunk, Yixing finally saw its outline. It was the Heavenly Bao continent. Yixing had a map of the Heavenly Bao continent in his hand. It was exactly the same as the outline in the sky. The point where the light bloomed, the point where the words appeared, happened to be the center of the Heavenly Bao continent. Could it be that that's the Heavenly Bao Palace? Yixing's heart skipped a beat. The strong light in the sky quickly dissipated and returned to normal. However, Yixing had already understood something. He was ready to leave this area and go to the center of the Heavenly Bao continent to take a look. At this moment, Yixing finally reacted. He seemed to have sensed a wave just now. The direction of the wave coincided with the center of the Heavenly Bao continent. Yixing flew in the air and appeared beside Xuezi's corpse in the blink of an eye. The super brain activated and scanned Xuezi. The destiny flame in Xuezi's head had not been extinguished. Xuezi's destiny flame was blue. There were a total of 5 flames. This was the destiny of a 5-star quasi-god. As long as there were enough resources to cultivate, a 5-star quasi-god's destiny would definitely become a 5-nirvana quasi-god in the future. Moreover, with Xuezi's family's strength, it would not be difficult to help him break through to the 6th nirvana quasi-god. Although the hope of becoming a true god powerhouse was very slim, if he could become a 6th nirvana quasi-god, he would be a peak existence below true gods. Even in the Dark Star Temple, he would have a very high status. Xuezi should have had a very good future. Unfortunately, he should not have been arrogant. Because of his arrogance, he looked down on disciples from mid-level continents. Because of his arrogance, he looked down on disciples from mid-level continents. Because of his arrogance, he treated Yixing like dirt. Because of his treatment of Yixing like dirt, he wanted to trample Yixing to death whenever there was a conflict between him and Yixing. But in the end he lost his life. Yixing's destiny was a 9-star blue destiny. This kind of destiny was considered very good in mid-level continents, but it was very ordinary in the Dark Star continent. A 5-star blue destiny could greatly increase his destiny flame. Whoosh! A ray of starlight shot into the sky, turning into a black vortex. The black hole astral aspect released boundless darkness, enveloping all directions. It produced a terrifying devouring power that rapidly devoured Xuezi's destiny flame. In Yixing's mind, the destiny flame continued to grow. The 9 flames gathered together, turning into a blue flame. Then the blue flame turned from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Finally, it turned into 5. Yixing's destiny flame had evolved to a 5-star blue destiny. In the Dark Star continent, this was the destiny flame of an extremely talented genius. The evils we bring on ourselves are the hardest to bear. Yixing looked at Xuezi's corpse and sighed. With a wave of his hand, he took Xuezi's storage ring. Then the grand perfection stage of fire force activated a sea of fire origin energy that enveloped Xuezi's body. The flames burned and crackled. Before long, Xuezi was burned to ashes. Chapter 794. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk Yixing flew in the sky. The great perfection stage of wind force was activated, and the surging wind force gathered around him. His speed was extremely fast. In a second, Yixing flew dozens of miles in the sky, reaching a speed that was dozens of times faster than the speed of sound. Although his speed was slower than the arrow intent possession, it was still much faster than the speed of a beginner stage king realm cultivator. Yixing was rushing towards the center of the Heavenly Bao continent. Judging from the scene in the sky, the Heavenly Bao Palace should be at the center of the Heavenly Bao continent. To be able to create such a huge commotion in the sky, Yixing guessed that a quasi-god probably did not have such ability. Only a true god powerhouse could do it. The Heavenly Bao continent was the burial ground of the true god powerhouse, Luo Tiangong. Martial artists above beginner stage king were blocked by restrictions and could not enter. Therefore, the only true god powerhouse who could leave behind a method in the heavenly Bao continent could only be Luo Tiangong himself. Yi Xing also guessed the reason why the words appeared in the sky. Perhaps it was related to his Sagittarius constellation. This was because he had been in the heavenly Bao continent for some time. These words did not appear at first, but they appeared after he used the Sagittarius constellation. There should be a connection between them. Luo Tiangong was an archery powerhouse, and the Sagittarius constellation was the highest constellation for archery martial artists. Therefore, the Sagittarius constellation triggered the method left behind by Luo Tiangong. This made sense. Luo Tiangong was someone from 20,000 years ago. To be precise, he died 20,000 years ago. The lifespan of a true god powerhouse was very long, and the limit was 30,000 years. Therefore, Luo Tiangong should have been around 20,000 years ago. As a famous true god powerhouse, since he left behind a method to guide Yi Xing to the heavenly Bao Palace, it was very likely to be related to his inheritance. Of course, Yi Xing had to go and take a look. The inheritance left behind by a top true god powerhouse was not inferior to the orthodox Dark Star Divine Palace. Only the palace master was qualified to inherit the orthodox Dark Star Divine Palace. The rest, even the upper echelons of the Divine Palace, could only learn 20 to 30% of it. This showed how precious this inheritance was. Yi Xing had a strong desire for this legacy. Yi Xing was not the only one heading towards the center of the heavenly Bao continent. Just now, all the martial artists in the heavenly Bao continent had sensed the fluctuations that the heavenly Bao Palace had emitted. Other than a small number of martial artists who were still searching, most of the disciples from the three great temples had already rushed to the center of the heavenly Bao continent. The disciples of the 10th peak were no exception. However, Yi Xing's speed was slightly faster. He went forward alone while the other 9 people went together. This was because they were heading towards the central region of the heavenly Bao continent, and would definitely meet the other disciples of the divine halls. After an hour, Yi Xing had already flown a few 100,000 li, and reached the center of the heavenly Bao continent. However, he was still a few 100,000 li away from the heavenly Bao hall. "Stop! Stop!" A voice came from afar. To Yi Xing's left, several 100 kilometers away, a group of cultivators was shouting at Yi Xing. This was a team of 5 people, and they were not disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace. A few 100 li was a very short distance for a king. However, Yi Xing's speed was faster than theirs, so he ignored them. Although both parties were heading in the same direction, after 10 breaths, they had changed from moving side by side to one in front and one behind. Moreover, the distance between both parties was still increasing. Damn it, a 9-star venerable lord can actually move so fast. He must have some extraordinary treasure that can increase his speed. Send a message to Sima Ning to stop him in front. After a few 100 breaths, Yi Xing had flown a few 1,000 li ahead. Suddenly, 5 figures rushed out from the front and lined up in a row, blocking Yi Xing's path. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 5 of them took out a formation flag at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the small formation flag grew to a few 100 feet tall, and stood in 5 different directions in the sky. A translucent light shield appeared in an instant, covering the void within a few 100 li. When the 5 of them threw out the formation flag, Yi Xing's arrow intent was attached to his body. He shuttled through the void, and appeared more than 100 li away in an instant. However, it was useless. Yi Xing was still in the light shield formed by the formation flag. Yi Xing observed for a while. This was an ordinary level 5 formation flag that could trap a low-level king. The 5 of them were all 3-star kings, and 2 of them were peak 3-star kings. From the symbol on their clothes, he could tell that they were disciples of the Radiance Divine Palace. Among the 3 divine temples, the relationship between them was not very harmonious. Among them, the Dark Star Divine Temple and the Radiance Divine Temple had the worst relationship. Most of the time, the Starry River Divine Temple played the role of a peacemaker, although it always did not please either side. It's the disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace. There was a symbol on the sect's clothes. The other party could also tell that Yi Xing was from the sect. Among the 5 of them, one of them was obviously a peak 3-star king. He looked at Yi Xing and said with a smile, "A mere 9-star venerable lord dares to walk alone in the heavenly Bao continent. I wonder if it's you who is brave? Or are you too stupid?" Yi Xing looked behind him. The 5 people who were chasing him were still far away from him. They would not be able to catch up with him in less than 10 breaths. Yi Xing retracted his gaze and glanced at the 5 of them. He said, "Who are you? You know that I dare to walk alone, but you still dare to stop me. I also want to ask, is it you who is brave, or are you too stupid?" Yi Xing's words were very domineering. However, the 5 of them obviously did not take him, a 9-star venerable lord, seriously. In their opinion, even if a 9-star venerable lord's combat strength was heaven-defying, how strong could he be? Therefore, Yi Xing's words only caused the 5 of them to burst into laughter. Yi Xing said indifferently, "In my opinion, it's not a wise move to deal with a cultivator walking alone in the heavenly Bao continent for no reason. Now, open the formation and let me leave. Then we'll mind our own business. This is the sensible choice. Senior brother Sima, this kid is too pretentious. Let me deal with him," a late 3-star king said to the peak 3-star king Sima Ning. "Don't be hasty." Sima Ning waved his hand and said to Yi Xing, "It's not impossible for you to leave. Hand over your storage ring, and I'll let you go immediately." Yi Xing calculated the time. It was about time. If he delayed any longer, the 5 people behind him would catch up, and he would be besieged by the 10 of them. Yi Xing said, "Sometimes it's not that there are no opportunities in life, but that you can't grasp them. Now, the opportunity to mind our own business is gone." Whoosh! A terrifying aura erupted from Yi Xing's body. 3 types of worldly forces, in addition to the aura of arrow intent. Although Yi Xing was a 9-star venerable lord, the aura that erupted from him was even more powerful than a 3-star king. Chapter 795. Sima Ning and the other 4 were surprised. They did not expect a 9th-star venerable lord to have such a terrifying aura. However, this did not mean that they were afraid. When Yi Xing was able to enter the heavenly Bao continent, they already knew that Yi Xing had the strength of one of the top 10 peaks in the outer sanctum. Although his aura was terrifying, he was only a 9-star venerable lord. In their opinion, Yi Xing should be at the bottom of the top 10. They were not afraid even if he was the 1st or 2nd disciple of a peak. This was because Sima Ning was also the 2nd disciple of a peak in the Radiant Shrine. His strength had reached the level of a late 4-star king. Among the other 5 people who were coming, there was also the 1st disciple of their peak. His strength was comparable to a peak 4-star king. With such a lineup, they could even kill the top disciple of the Dark Star Temple. Naturally, they did not care about a 9th-star venerable lord like Yi Xing. Sima Ning grunted coldly and said, "Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Wei Yan, kill him." The late 3-star king who said that he wanted to deal with Yi Xing laughed. His aura exploded, and the surrounding void shook. Whoosh! Wei Yan had used the earth element astrology, and it was an extreme earth element astrology. The yellow earth element astrology fell on the golden mace in Wei Yan's hand. Boom! Wei Yan pulled out his mace, and with the force of 10,000 soldiers, he viciously struck at Yi Xing like a collapsing mountain. Yi Xing instantly activated his fiery astral aspect. Wind origin energy gathered around him, and with a whoosh he shifted his position. His speed was as fast as lightning, allowing him to evade Wei Yan's attack. At the same time, Yi Xing pointed his finger, and the astral arrow intent burst out. It contained the 3 forces of darkness, wind and fire. It formed a black flame finger and shot out like an arrow. Yi Xing's body was fast enough, but the astral finger arrow was even faster. Wei Yan's strength was not at the peak of a 3-star king. He was inferior to Sun Gang and Lu Li. His strength was in strength and defense, not speed. Facing Yi Xing's sudden counterattack, how could he dodge it? Whoosh! The black flame astral finger instantly shot towards Wei Yan's forehead. The defensive power that Wei Yan was so proud of was completely useless in front of the black flame astral finger. that had the penetrative power of an arrow. Whoosh! Under Wei Yan's horrified gaze, the black flame astral finger pierced through his protective aura and into his forehead. Ah! Wei Yan let out a blood-curdling scream as blood instantly spurted out. The power contained in the black flame astral finger exploded in his head, creating a thumb-sized bloody hole. The inside of his head was completely shattered by the terrifying power, and his life force was rapidly draining away. Junior brother Wei. Sima Ning and the others were greatly shocked and hurriedly exclaimed. At this moment, all Wei Yan felt was a soul-piercing pain. He clutched his head with both hands and howled miserably. His body fell downwards, landing on the flat surface formed by the array formation. Very soon, Wei Yan could not even howl anymore. His entire body was convulsing, and it was obvious that he was about to die. Sima Ning and the others had never imagined that Yi Xing would be so dangerous. His reaction speed and the penetrative power of the black flame astral finger made it seem like he could take someone's life in the blink of an eye. Perhaps Yi Xing's strength did not exceed Sima Ning and the others' expectations, but Yi Xing's lethality was beyond their expectations. Lethality was not equal to strength. For example, Sima Ning was much stronger than Wei Yan, and the strength that Yi Xing had just displayed did not enter Sima Ning's eyes. However, if Sima Ning were to attack Wei Yan, it would be very difficult for him to kill him in one move. It was not that he did not have strength, but that his lethality was not enough. Save junior brother Wei. Sima Ning coldly shouted and immediately used his astrology. His strength erupted as he charged towards Yi Xing. Sima Ning's astrology was the saint-level ice viper astrology. This was an icy astrology that was covered in white snow. Above the astrology, there was a huge shadow of an ice viper that breathed in and out white mist. It was as if all the cold chi in the entire astrology was coming from this ice viper. The ice viper astrology was the pinnacle of water-type astrology. Just the extreme cold chi that leaked out of it was enough to make even a 4-star king feel troubled. Sima Ning wore a black-level high-grade glove on his hand. His palm was like a blade as he chopped down towards Yi Xing. Frigid astral energy, frigid momentum, frigid astral energy, frigid astral energy. All kinds of energy converged and formed a huge ice blade. The ice blade carried extreme coldness and instantly froze everything within 100 miles. Everywhere was filled with bone-chilling coldness. Although Sima Ning's strength was not as strong as Xuezi's, it was still very terrifying. Yi Xing could severely injure Wei Yan in one move, but it would be difficult for him to deal with Sima Ning's move. The cold chi froze everything within 100 miles. Yi Xing felt that the blood in his body seemed to be flowing slowly because of this cold chi. The extreme level of fire astrology could not dispel this cold chi at all. Under this freezing chi, Yi Xing could not use his speed at all, and could not dodge this attack. The power contained in the ice blade astral wind was not something that Yi Xing could contend with. Da! Sima Ning roared. With this palm strike he wanted to end Yi Xinghuan's life with a single strike. Whoosh! A ray of starlight shot out from Yi Xing's forehead and turned into a huge starlight bow in the sky. Yi Xing used the Sagittarius astrology. The Sagittarius astrology that contained extreme penetrating power dropped down. The cold chi around Yi Xing was instantly cut into pieces. The extreme level of the flame constellation could not do anything to the Ice Viper constellation's freezing chi, but the Sagittarius constellation was the highest constellation. How could the Ice Viper constellation be able to freeze it? Wherever the Sagittarius constellation's star power fell, the freezing chi would shatter. The ice seal was gone. Yi Xing could use his extreme speed to dodge Sima Ning's move, but Yi Xing did not. 10,000 fire thunder. The crimson flame bow appeared in Yi Xing's hands. The dark wind fire arrow technique was activated. Yi Xing used the most violent and tyrannical bow technique. Boom! A flaming bow shot out. The space in front of it shattered and the explosion was like thunder. The flaming bow collided with the ice blade astral wind. The terrifying collision produced a destructive shockwave that spread out in all directions. In the explosion, the ice blade astral wind collapsed layer by layer. The power of the flaming bow did not decrease. It continued to attack forward and destroyed all the ice blade astral wind in the sky. Sima Ning's expression turned into fear. He never expected that Yi Xing would have the highest level of astrology, the Sagittarius astrology. He also did not expect that Yi Xing's strength would be so strong, far surpassing his own. Even his peak's #1 disciple Wu Qingkong could not compare. 10,000 fire thunder. The power of the flaming bow had not dissipated. Yi Xing waved the crimson flame bow in his hands. Chapter 798. Yi Xing looked at him and said, Yi Xing, how should I address you? Pang Zhan sneered and said, remember, the person who will kill you is the #1 outer disciple of the Radiance Temple, Pang Zhan. Pang Zhan raised his hand, and the saber on his back flew into his hand. It shone brightly, and a terrifying saber aura burst out. The saber aura was domineering and extremely sharp. It contained saber intent. Yi Xing's aura also burst out, and the arrow intense penetrative power spread in all directions. However, the other party's aura was too powerful. The saber intense aura could cut through everything. Yi Xing's aura couldn't get close to Pang Zhan at all. Instead, the saber aura made Yi Xing feel a heavy pressure. This was the first time Yi Xing had lost to a 3-star king in terms of aura. You're only a 9-star supremacy, but you've comprehended arrow intent. You're indeed not simple. However, you're far from being Sima Ning's match. What other trump cards do you have? Take them all out. Pang Zhan shouted and slashed with his saber. Deadly saber slash. The saber slashed down, and there was no sign of life. This move, Deadly Saber Slash, was filled with killing intent. It was a saber technique that could kill people. Not only was Pang Zhan's saber sharp, but it was also very heavy and contained a terrifying power. This saber contained 2 kinds of worldly auras, the metal and earth auras. Moreover, these 2 worldly auras had reached the peak of greater mastery. They were only a little bit away from perfection. Although Pang Zhan's cultivation wasn't the highest among the 3-star kings, the strength of his astral energy was the strongest among all the 3-star kings Yi Xing had met. His mastery of high-grade mystic class cultivation techniques surpassed any 3-star king that Yi Xing had met. Even though Pang Zhan hadn't used his astrology yet, the power of his saber wasn't inferior to most 4-star kings. Sima Ning's full-strength attack wasn't as terrifying as Pang Zhan's. Yi Xing sensed that if he only used the fire astrology, he definitely wouldn't be able to block this saber. Whoosh! Starlight shot out from Yi Xing's forehead and transformed into a huge starlight bow. Yi Xing was using the Sagittarius constellation. 10,000 flames and thunder. The crimson flame bow appeared in his hand, and he swung out a violent and tyrannical flaming bow shadow. Boom! The flaming bow shadow collided with the astral saber. Shockwaves surged into the sky, and a destructive shockwave spread out in an instant. Pang Zhan didn't move, but the astral saber shattered. Although Sima Ning had died at Yi Xing's hands and Pang Zhan had expected that Yi Xing would be able to block his saber strike, he was still shocked to see a 9th-star venerable lord erupt with such heaven-defying strength. Especially when Yi Xing actually possessed the legendary Sagittarius constellation astrological aspect, which shocked Pang Zhan even more. The other 9 3-star peak kings were no exception. They looked at the Sagittarius constellation in the sky with disbelief in their eyes. Yi Xing's figure instantly flew backwards. It wasn't because he couldn't withstand the impact, but because he took the initiative to use the force to retreat. Yi Xing's speed was already extremely fast. With the arrow intent attached to his body, he borrowed the force to retreat and instantly covered 100 miles. At the same time, Yi Xing pulled back the crimson flame bow, and a black flame arrow gradually formed. Yi Xing circulated the black flame wind fire art. He had killed Shuizi and Sima Ning in this state before. Although Pang Zhan was stronger, Yi Xing was forced to use all his strength to kill him. Pang Zhan felt the extreme penetrative power from the black flame arrow, which made him very unhappy. Slash! Pang Zhan shouted loudly, and a ray of starlight shot out from his forehead. As he circulated his astrology, he rushed towards Yi Xing and slashed out with his saber. Starlight blossomed in the sky, turning into a strange astrological aspect. Most astrological aspects were circular, but Pang Zhan's astrological aspect was long, and its shape was like an ancient large saber. Yi Xing had only seen two types of astrological aspects that weren't circular: his own Sagittarius constellation, and Wei Qingxuan's Virgo constellation. The rest, even the black hole astrological aspects, were circular. Moreover, even the Sagittarius constellation and Virgo constellation were formed by many small stars, and the small stars were all circular. The ancient saber-like astrological aspect above Pangzhan was not formed by many small stars, but a complete whole. Therefore, it could be excluded from the constellation astrological aspects. The star power of this astrological aspect was surging and sharp, and its strength far surpassed the extreme grade astrological aspects. Yi Xing recognized that this was the saint grade astrological aspect, the heavenly saber astrological aspect. Among the weapon-type astrological aspects, only the Sagittarius constellation was the supreme astrological aspect. The other weapon astrological aspects were all saint-grade astrological aspects. For example, the heavenly saber astrological aspect, heavenly saber astrological aspect, heavenly spear astrological aspect, heavenly bow astrological aspect, and so on. Compared to metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, which were all similar astrological aspects, weapon-type astrological aspects were more powerful and lethal. Martial artists who had the heavenly saber astrological aspect were born to be peerless swordsmen. Just like the combination of the Sagittarius constellation and the arrow intent, the combination of the heavenly saber astrological aspect and the saber intent would similarly increase the power. Of course, the heavenly saber astrological aspect and the heavenly bow astrological aspect were of the same grade. Compared to the Sagittarius constellation, it was still a grade lower. If the two of them were of the same cultivation level, Yi Xing could easily crush his opponent with the Sagittarius constellation astrological aspect. However, the difference in cultivation level between the two of them was huge. Yi Xing relied on the Sagittarius constellation astrological aspect to increase his strength to a level where he could fight with Pangzhan. Pangzhan, on the other hand, used the heavenly saber astrological aspect to increase his strength by a large level. Only a 5-star king could compete with him. Rip Pangzhan's saber slashed out, and the sky was like a piece of cloth being torn apart. He became one with his saber and traveled through the torn space at extreme speed. His speed was so fast that it was almost like teleportation. The distance between the two of them was more than 200 miles. Even if Pangzhan's speed was as fast as teleportation, he would still need about a breath's time to reach Yi Xing. At this moment, the black flame arrow on the crimson flame bow had already formed. Whoosh, the arrow intent left the bow, and all of Yi Xing's power was contained in this arrow. Extreme penetrative power, extreme speed, and extreme power. This arrow was enough to kill an invincible 4-star king. Even a 5-star king wouldn't dare to underestimate it. However, Pangzhan's strength wasn't at the level of a normal 5-star king. Facing this arrow, Pangzhan didn't dodge. His aura was like a rainbow, and his saber aura became brighter and brighter. The space created by the embryonic form of the beam of space was viscous. Under the sharp saber intent, the effect was close to zero. Wherever the saber aura passed, not to mention space, even mountains and the ground would instantly crack open. There was a terrifying aura that seemed to be able to kill gods and Buddhas in their way. The two's attack speed was extremely fast. In less than half a blink of an eye, the saber aura and the black flame finger aura had collided. Bang! The black flame arrow that had always been successful was instantly split into two. It was actually split in half by Pangzhan's saber. Now the saber aura shattered the void, and its power was like a rainbow. It instantly slashed towards Yi Xing. Chapter 799. Hiss! Yi Xing sucked in a breath of cold air. Although that sharp blade aura had yet to land on his body, he already felt as if the blade was about to touch him. After becoming a disciple of the Dark Star God Palace, this was the first time Yi Xing had met such a powerful opponent. Pangzhan's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Xuezi was a peak existence amongst the 4-star kings. If it weren't for Yi Xing, she would have been the #1 outer disciple of the Dark Star God Palace. However, Shui Ziyi's strength was on a completely different level compared to Pang Zhan's. No matter how strong the former was amongst the 4-star kings, she was still a 4-star king, while the latter was a 5-star king. This was a huge difference. Because of this, Yi Xing could use the Sagittarius constellation to kill Shui Ziyi, but he couldn't do anything to Pang Zhan. Instead, he had instantly fallen into a life-and-death situation. At this critical moment, Yi Xing's mental energy reached the limit. The superbrain activated, and everything seemed to slow down. The crimson flame bow instantly drew out a dark whirlpool. At the same time, Yi Xing's arrow intent was activated to the limit. He even used the azure cloud wings and the 9 heavens astral travel technique. He used all his strength to increase his speed to the limit. The power of this blade was too terrifying. It could cut through everything. The dark whirlpool couldn't destroy this blade at all. In an instant, the dark whirlpool was split into 2 by the blade aura. At this moment, Yi Xing's body and the blade aura flashed at the same time, moving in the same direction at a speed that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The blade aura moved forward, while Yi Xing retreated. In the end, the blade aura moved forward for dozens of miles, while Yi Xing retreated more than 100 miles. The blade aura stopped, and Pang Zhan's figure appeared. He glanced at the tip of the blade, and a few drops of blood dripped down like pearls. It was Yi Xing's blood. That blade aura had hit Yi Xing. More than 100 miles away, Yi Xing suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. There was a thin crack on his inner armor, and blood was flowing out. That slash of Pang Zhan's was indeed too terrifying. Even the high-grade black rank protective inner armor had a crack cut open. With Yi Xing's vitality, this wound was nothing. The real injury was that the other party's saber energy had invaded his body and destroyed his internal organs. His opponent's saber energy contained saber intent, which was extremely destructive. Yi Xing was severely injured, and his face turned pale. He quickly consumed a healing pill. Hee. Pang Zhan was in a good mood. He smiled and said, "A genius who possesses a supreme astrology. This is a heaven-defying monster that only exists in legends. Yi Xing, you are indeed a peerless genius, but unfortunately, you will die under my blade, haha." As he laughed, Pang Zhan's saber tore through the void, and another terrifying slash came at Yi Xing. He did not give Yi Xing any time to catch his breath. Healing pills required a certain amount of time, and Pang Zhan would not give Yi Xing time to heal. Yi Xing's superbrain scanned and paid attention to Pang Zhan. He was aware of Pang Zhan's every move. The moment Pang Zhan slashed, Yi Xing had already dodged to the side. At the same time, a beam of starlight shot into the sky, and the surroundings turned into endless darkness. A huge black hole vortex appeared in the sky. Yi Xing used the black hole astrology. As Yi Xing's cultivation base grew higher and stronger, the world of darkness formed by the black hole astrological aspect grew wider and wider. In an instant, Pang Zhan fell into darkness. The moment before he fell into darkness, he saw Yi Xing dodging. He was about to adjust his direction and attack the dodging Yi Xing. However, the sudden darkness caused him to lose sight of Yi Xing. Moreover, everyone had an instinctive fear of darkness. If there was nothing in front of them and nothing was known, no one would dare to move forward boldly. Pang Zhan also had this feeling, and his attacks were greatly reduced. What astrology is this? Looking at the only visible black vortex, Pang Zhan was shocked. Although the ultimate astrological form was a legend, every ultimate astrological form had a name. However, Pang Zhan didn't know what kind of astrological form this dark vortex was. While Pang Zhan was shocked, an extremely penetrating aura locked onto him, causing his heart to tighten. He knew that Yi Xing was aiming at him in the dark, but he did not know where Yi Xing was. Without knowing Yi Xing's location, he could not attack randomly. Pang Zhan knew that this would only give the other party an opportunity to find him. Whoosh! Another beam of starlight shot out from between Pang Zhan's brows, forming an earthy yellow astrology in the sky. It was an extreme earth astrology. Pang Zhan had 2 astrology. One was the saint-level Heaven Blade astrology, and the other was an extreme earth astrology. The Heaven Blade astrology focused on offense, while the earth astrology focused on defense. Pang Zhan rarely used his earth astrology, because when facing opponents, he only attacked and rarely defended. Most of his opponents died when he attacked, so he did not need to defend. However, this time he did not even know where Yixing was, so he could only defend. The Earth astrology poured down surging Earth astral energy, forming a protective shield in all directions. Pang Zhan also put away his blade and got into a defensive posture, using his blade to protect his body. Pang Zhan had always felt that extremely penetrating aura locking onto him, but Yixing did not make a move. He knew that Yixing must be using the time to recover from his injuries, so he waited patiently, focusing on defense and staying alert. After a dozen breaths, there was a sudden sonic boom. Pang Zhan's heart tightened, and his eyes shone brightly. He was extremely alert. Almost at the same time as the sonic boom, there was a blood-curdling scream. Pang Zhan was not attacked, but he looked horrified. Yixing did not attack him. Instead, he attacked his other 9 teammates. Yixing's action was beyond Pang Zhan's expectations, and it was exactly what Pang Zhan did not want to see. That blood-curdling scream was short and mournful. The person who was hit by the arrow had clearly died. Senior brother Pang Zhan. In the darkness, the voices of the other Brilliance Temple disciples were heard. Their voices filled with terror. Soon, there was a second scream, and another Brilliance Temple disciple died. Yixing. Pang Zhan was furious. "Come at me if you have anything." Yixing's reply came from the darkness. "Don't worry, it will be your turn. I'll take care of these hindrances first." Yixing used the grand momentum of darkness. The grand completion of the grand momentum of darkness allowed him to become one with the darkness. In the world of darkness, he moved stealthily without a trace. The sound came from different places. Pang Zhan was unable to determine Yixing's location based on the sound. At this moment, Pang Zhan's expression really changed. He was somewhat frightened. He realized that he could not do anything to Yixing, but Yixing could kill them one by one. Chapter 800. Although Yixing had acted quickly, he had only killed 4 people. The Black Hole's world of darkness had a limited range, but the Peak 3-star kings were extremely fast. In the beginning, the 9 Peak 3-star kings were trapped in the world of darkness. As they did not know what was going on, they did not dare to act rashly. However, after the first scream rang out, the other 3-star Peak kings all scattered and fled. They only managed to escape the world of darkness after running several hundred miles away. Their hearts were filled with fear. Yixing's archery was too powerful. Even if they faced him head-on, they would not be able to block one arrow. In the world of darkness, they did not even have the chance to resist. Yixing did not chase after the 5 who had escaped the world of darkness. His first target was Pang Zhan. In the world of darkness, Yixing pulled open the red flame bow. A black flame arrow condensed as he aimed at Pang Zhan. Whoosh! When his power and aura had accumulated to the limit, Yixing instantly released the bowstring. The black flame arrow shot out. The black flame arrow was too fast. In an instant, it had traveled more than 100 miles. As soon as it left the bowstring, it had arrived behind Pang Zhan. The protective shield formed by the Earth star power was instantly penetrated. However, Pang Zhan's strength was comparable to a 5-star king. His reaction speed was extremely fast. The moment the black flame arrow penetrated the Earth star power shield, Pang Zhan turned around and raised his saber. The black flame arrow was split into 2. With the Skyblade star form and saber intent, Pang Zhan's saber was not only powerful, but also extremely sharp. Unless the black flame arrow hit his body before he could block it, it would immediately be cut in half and lose all its strength the moment it came into contact with his saber. After all, the black flame arrow was only an energy arrow and not a true metal arrow. If it was a metal arrow made of a mystic high-grade metal, Pang Zhan would not be able to split it. However, Pang Zhan's strength was enough to split the metal arrow. Pang Zhan's saber split the black flame arrow in 2. His eyes were filled with intense killing intent as he shouted, "Die!" His saber intent shattered the sky as Pang Zhan rushed toward Yixing. In an instant, he had traveled dozens of miles. 100 miles was covered in the blink of an eye. It had to be said that Pang Zhan's reaction was extremely fast. Just from that instant of contact with the black flame arrow, he was able to determine Yixing's direction and distance from the arrow. However, the distance between the two of them was more than 100 li. No matter how fast Peng Zhan was, he couldn't be like an arrow, instantly arriving. And Yixing's reaction speed was not slower than Peng Zhan's. By the time Peng Zhan charged over, Yixing had already moved. Peng Zhan's attack missed, and he lost sight of Yixing. He could only turn back to defense and wait for Yixing to attack. After a few breaths, Yixing shot another arrow. The result was the same as before. The black flame arrow merely pierced through Peng Zhan's earth astral energy shield before Peng Zhan reacted, and cut the black flame arrow in half. Furthermore, Peng Zhan once again made use of the black flame arrow to attack Yixing. This time, Peng Zhan swept his blade horizontally. The blade aura spread out in a fan shape, spanning dozens of li. Although Yixing relied on his speed to dodge in advance, he was still shocked. Fortunately, the direction he changed was not within Peng Zhan's attack range. Otherwise, he would have taken the initiative to collide with the blade aura. Peng Zhan's strength was much higher than Yixing's. Through the two arrows, Yixing judged that the possibility of killing Peng Zhan was very low. Unless Peng Zhan made a mistake with his reaction speed, he would be able to block Yixing's arrows. Yixing didn't think that Peng Zhan, a 5-star king and a 3-star king, would make a mistake at the critical moment of life and death. Therefore, Yixing gave up on shooting. Yixing walked in the world of darkness, heading towards the Heavenly Bao Palace. The world of darkness moved along with the black hole astral energy. As the distance between the two increased, Peng Zhan finally left the world of darkness. At this moment, the distance between the two was already a few hundred li. Yixing was already standing outside the Heavenly Bao Palace. Yixing could feel a powerful force pulling him closer and closer to the Heavenly Bao Hall. The seal that enveloped the Heavenly Bao Hall did not stop him. When Peng Zhan saw Yixing, he rushed towards Yixing with extreme speed, his eyes filled with intense killing intent. However, Peng Zhan was blocked by the Heavenly Bao Palace's seal. Looking at Yixing who had entered the seal, Peng Zhan couldn't help but be stunned. Then he roared, "Yixing, remember this. Next time, I, Peng Zhan, will take your dog life." Yixing smiled faintly and said loudly, "You also remember this. Next time, my arrow will pierce through your head." Just as Yixing said that, he felt the surrounding space begin to distort. At this moment, he realized that the attractive force just now had sent him to a small altar. This small altar was densely covered with runes. From the looks of it, it seemed to have the effect of teleportation. In the blink of an eye, the distorted space turned into a spatial whirlpool. Yixing was sucked into the spatial whirlpool and disappeared. When Yixing's feet touched the ground, he realized that he was already in a spacious hall. This hall was dozens of meters tall, and about 100 meters in both length and width. In front of Yixing, there was a portrait on the wall. It was a middle-aged man in black with a bow on his back. Below the portrait, there was a bronze coffin. There was nothing else in the entire hall. It seemed very empty. A thought arose in Yixing's mind. This is Luo Tiangong's burial ground? Luo Tiangong is buried in the coffin? Didn't they say that Luo Tiangong's burial ground has his inheritance and that it's a huge treasure? Where's the treasure? Just as Yixing was feeling puzzled, the sound of air slapping against each other suddenly came from above. Yixing looked up and saw a black eagle about half an arm's length flying towards him. Yixing's heart skipped a beat. He had scanned the entire hall and did not see this black eagle. Now that it had appeared above him, could it have appeared out of thin air? The black eagle flew in front of Yixing and only stopped when it was at the same level as Yixing's head. Its eyes were fixed on Yixing. Yixing also looked at the black eagle with a strange expression. Then he activated his super brain to scan it. The result surprised Yixing. This black eagle was not alive. It was just a ball of nothingness that was similar to energy. After the black eagle glanced at Yixing, it spoke in human language. "Young man, you don't have to be surprised. It's all thanks to me that you're able to come here." Seeing that the black eagle could speak, Yixing immediately asked, "Senior, why did you ask me to come here? Please tell me." A human-like smile appeared on the black eagle's face as it said, I was ordered by my master to wait for the person with the Sagittarius constellation. I've waited for 20,000 years. Young man, you're finally here. As Yixing had expected, the image in the sky had led him here because of the Sagittarius constellation. Yixing asked, Senior, is your master Luo Tiangong? Senior Luo. Chapter 801. After chatting with the Black Eagle, Yixing understood the situation. The Black Eagle was called Eagle Rail, and his master was indeed Luo Tiangong. Eagle Rail was originally a demon god, and a true god-level demon god at that. After he was subdued by Luo Tiangong, he had been guarding the heavenly Bao Hall for Luo Tiangong. Later on, when Luo Tiangong's time was up, Eagle Rail was worried that he would end up like Luo Tiangong. So he asked Luo Tiangong to help him cultivate the demon clan's art of immortality, to give up his physical body and turn into a demon spirit, becoming an immortal body of energy. Luo Tiangong helped him succeed, and Eagle Rail's reward was that after Luo Tiangong died, he would guard the heavenly Bao Hall forever, as Luo Tiangong's tomb guardian. Eagle Rail knew everything about Luo Tiangong, and the methods he left behind after his death. Luo Tiangong also told him to find a descendant with the Sagittarius constellation. Senior Luo Tiangong also has the Sagittarius constellation? Yixing couldn't help but ask. Eagle Rail replied, No, Master has the heavenly Bao constellation. However, Master's life's opportunities all came from the Star Secret Realm, and the Almighty who left the Star Secret Realm was a supreme being with the Sagittarius constellation. When Master was young, he obtained many benefits in the Star Secret Realm because of the heavenly Bao constellation. However, Master's constellation is still not enough to obtain all the inheritance of that Almighty. Only the Sagittarius constellation can obtain it. Yixing understood and said, So Senior Luo Tiangong is looking for an inheritor for the Almighty who left the Star Secret Realm? Eagle Rail replied, That's right. Yixing, you are the inheritor, the only lucky person who has the chance to obtain all the treasures in the Star Secret Realm. Hearing Eagle Rail's words, Yixing's heart thumped, and he was very excited. Yixing was already looking forward to Luo Tiangong's inheritance. Now that he knew that he could obtain the inheritance of a supreme being, his joy was 100 times stronger. Yixing took 2 deep breaths to calm his mind and said, Senior Eagle Track, how can I obtain the inheritance of that almighty being? Eagle Track said, With your current cultivation, you are still miles away. You need to at least become a 9-star king before you have the right to enter the Star Secret Realm. However, my master's inheritance came from the Star Secret Realm. Since you have obtained my master's inheritance, you can also be considered to have obtained part of that Almighty's inheritance. Yixing said, What should I do now? Ingui waved his hand, and a hexagonal jade box appeared out of nowhere and flew toward Yixing. Eagle Track said, My master left you 3 gifts. This is the first one. Yixing opened the jade box. Inside was a ball of blood the size of a finger. This ball of blood was bright red with a hint of gold, and it exuded an extremely surging aura. Although it was only the size of a finger, Yixing felt as if he was looking at a vast ocean. This blood definitely had an extraordinary origin. It was 100 times more powerful than the divine dragon blood essence that Yixing had obtained before. Yixing said in surprise, What blood is this? Eagle Track said, This is the blood essence of a true god. It is the essence of a true god's blood. The most powerful part is condensed from the blood in the heart. Hiss! Yixing's heart thumped. True gods were extremely powerful existences. The power contained in the blood of a true god was extremely terrifying, and the blood essence in the heart was the most powerful. The blood essence condensed from the heart's blood essence contained unimaginable power. Although the true god blood essence in front of him was only the size of a finger, it was a priceless treasure that could only be found by chance. Ingui continued, The blood essence of a true god can only be condensed from the blood of the heart with surging vitality. Condensing the blood essence of a true god is extremely harmful to their vitality, affecting their lifespan by at least 1,000 years. Only a true god can condense the blood from their heart into blood essence, but no true God is willing to sacrifice their vitality to condense the blood essence. Thus, the blood essence of a true God is extremely rare. This ball of blood essence was condensed from the blood of my master's heart. He originally had a lifespan of 3,000 years, but after condensing this ball of blood essence, he only lived for 500 years. Yixing's heart was somewhat heavy. This small ball of blood essence actually contained 2,000 years of Luo Tiangong's lifespan. 2,000 years. The lifespan of a king was only 1,000 years. Only by undergoing nirvana and becoming a quasi-god could one live for 2,000 years. At this moment, Yixing felt that the jade box in his hand was as heavy as 10,000 kilograms. Yixing sighed and said, "I don't know Senior Luo Tiangong. How can I accept such a valuable gift from him?" Ingui said, "My master said that if he hadn't obtained the fortune left behind by that Almighty in the Star Secret Realm, his cultivation might have stopped at the 9-star King realm. Even if he had encountered other opportunities later on, becoming a quasi-god in the first nirvana was his limit. However, because of his fortuitous encounter in the Star Secret Realm, he became a true god with a lifespan of 30,000 years. Moreover, he was invincible in the flowing light world for 20,000 years. Even the 3 sacred temples had to retreat before him. That Almighty's kindness to him was higher than the heavens and thicker than the earth, and he had no way to repay it. Therefore, spending 2,000 years of his lifespan to find a successor for that Almighty was nothing. Although it was Ngui's narration, Yixing was still deeply moved when he heard Luo Tiangong's words. He deeply admired Luo Tiangong's character. Yixing said, "That Almighty and Senior Luo Tiangong both used their kindness to benefit the future generations. This Yi sincerely admires them. Today, I have received Senior Luo Tiangong's kindness. When my cultivation reaches a certain level, I will definitely leave behind an opportunity for the future generations." Ngui revealed a human-like smile and said, "I believe that my master's greatest wish is for you to become a 9-star king as soon as possible and obtain that Almighty's inheritance. Then, you can become a sovereign like that Almighty. My master was invincible among true gods, but he still couldn't take that step to become a sovereign. It was a pity. The reason why he left behind the true God's blood essence for you was to build your foundation and increase your chances of becoming a sovereign in the future." Yixing's eyes shone with unswerving determination. Becoming a sovereign and stepping into the peak of the martial path was also the goal he had always pursued. The true God's blood essence was surging with power. Although a 9-star venerable needed to accumulate a large amount of astral energy to break through to the king realm, Yixing was sure that refining this true God's blood essence would make it easy for him to break through to the king realm. The key was what grade of imperial body this true God's blood essence would help him build after he broke through to the king realm. The biggest difference between venerables and kings was their physique. After breaking through to the king realm, one would be able to build an imperial body and possess a powerful physique. The stronger one's physique, the stronger one's vitality, and the more astral energy one could store. After reaching the star nirvana realm, one would have to undergo life nirvana. Each life nirvana would allow one's physique to soar and their vitality to increase rapidly. Obviously, if one's physique was already very strong before nirvana, then it would naturally be even stronger after nirvana. From this, it could be seen that the strength of an imperial body was the foundation of the martial path's future. It was extremely important. Chapter 802. An imperial body was divided into 4 grades: low grade, medium grade, high grade, and top grade. The vast majority of kings had low-grade imperial bodies. Only 1 in 100,000 kings had a medium-grade imperial body. Only 1 in 100,000 kings with a medium-grade imperial body had a high-grade imperial body. Only 1 in 100,000 kings with a high-grade imperial body had a top-grade imperial body. And this was just a rough ratio. In fact, the probability was even lower. An imperial body was formed when one broke through to the king realm. When one was an initial stage king, they could use treasures to enhance it. But when one became a mid-stage king, it would be completely fixed and could not be changed. Every 100 years, a void portal would appear in the heavenly Bao continent's seal, and only mid-stage kings and below could enter. This was obviously not an accident, but something Luo Tiangong had done on purpose. Otherwise, if the cultivator who entered the Heavenly Bao Palace was already a 4-star king, then this true god blood essence would not have any effect on his imperial body. Yi Xing was already a 9-star king, and the next step was to break through to the astral sea realm. Naturally, he was very concerned about the grade of his imperial body. Yi Xing thought to himself, the higher the grade of the imperial body, the stronger the vitality. Even a low-grade imperial body can withstand many fatal injuries at the venerable realm. A medium-grade imperial body has no vital points except for the head. A high-grade imperial body can regrow severed limbs, and there are no vital points on the body. Even if the brain is severely damaged, it can still be treated. As for a top-grade imperial body, it is even more heaven-defying. In terms of vitality, it is comparable to a divine body. It is an immortal body, and even if the head is cut off, it will be fine. True God blood essence is condensed from the blood of a true God's heart. High grade or top grade. A true God blood essence's vitality was too overwhelming. The imperial body formed would definitely be extraordinary. Yi Xing did not even consider a low-grade or medium-grade imperial body. In fact, Yi Xing felt that the probability of a high-grade imperial body was not high. It would most likely be a top-grade imperial body. A true god had spent 2,000 years of his life essence. And if he couldn't make a king's imperial body reach the top grade, it would be a bit unreasonable. However, an extreme-grade king body was only a legend. Even an upper-grade king body was rare. The Dark Star Divine Palace was a top 5-star sect, but for hundreds of years, there had been several batches of disciples without a single upper-grade king body. As for the best quality imperial body, it was something that only the temple masters and divine emperors had ever possessed. On the Dark Star continent, true gods were the peak, numbering around 100. Quasi-gods were the backbone, numbering in the tens of thousands. As for kings, they were extremely ordinary existences, numbering in the hundreds of millions. How many kings had there been in the Dark Star continent for tens of thousands of years? This was an unimaginable number. From this, it could be seen how rare a top-grade imperial body was. It wasn't strange to call it a legend. Yi Xing retracted his gaze from the true god blood essence and asked, Senior Ingui, shall I refine the true god blood essence here? Eagle Track said, that's right. After you refine the true god's blood essence, I'll give your master the second and third gifts. After Eagle Track finished speaking, he flapped his wings and flew away, disappearing without a trace. Yi Xing sat on the ground with the jade box placed in front of him. After refining this true god blood essence, he would be able to break through to the king realm and build an excellent imperial body. He was a little excited in his heart. After a while, Yi Xing slowly calmed down. At this time he began to circulate the profound grade high-rank falling star art, the third layer. Under the control of Yi Xing's astral star, the true god blood essence rose from the jade box and moved above Yi Xing's head before stopping. The surging energy in the true god blood essence turned into wisps of light that were attracted by the falling star art. They fell down and were absorbed into Yi Xing's body. The energy in the true god blood essence was different from normal astral energy. It didn't gather in the Dantian's star vortex along his meridians. After entering his body, most of it seeped into his body and merged with Yi Xing's flesh, blood and bones. Yi Xing could clearly feel that after absorbing the true god blood essence, not only did the astral energy in his body increase in strength, but his physical body also became stronger. Moreover, most of the energy in the true god blood essence was used to strengthen his physical body. Yi Xing's astral energy and physical body were improving at an extremely fast speed. However, the true god blood essence above his head didn't shrink at all. It seemed to be the size of a finger, but the energy light that fell from it didn't decrease at all. It could be seen that although the true god blood essence was small, the energy it contained was surging like the sea. Yi Xing couldn't absorb it all in a short time. Time passed slowly. Yi Xing closed his eyes, wholeheartedly cultivating and absorbing the true god blood essence, as if he was in a meditative state. After an entire day passed, the true god blood essence didn't seem to have changed at all. However, Yixing's physical body had improved by leaps and bounds. His cultivation at the peak of Heavenly Layer 9th stage was becoming increasingly stable. In just one day, Yixing's physical body had risen to a new level. Yixing could clearly feel the vitality in his body surging, and his self-healing ability greatly enhanced. Although this was partly due to Yixing's previous accumulations, to have such progress in a single day was enough to prove the miraculous effects of the true God blood essence. This was also because the true God blood essence had divided a lot of energy to consolidate Yixing's cultivation. Otherwise, Yixing's physical body would have strengthened even faster. Although his vitality had risen, it was still inferior to a low-grade king body. With the energy of the true God blood essence, he would need to build a high-grade king body at the very least, or even a top-grade king body. Now this was only a small step forward. It would take a long time. Yixing sat cross-legged. The finger-sized true God blood essence constantly shined with light. Wisps of pure and surging energy were constantly absorbed into Yixing's body. Repeating this process over and over again. The first day, the second day, the third day, time passed day by day. Yixing's physical body grew stronger with each passing day. Every few days, Yixing could feel that his physique would undergo a qualitative change. As for his cultivation, it became increasingly stable at the peak of Heavenly Layer 9th stage, only a single step away from reaching the Star Sea realm. However, this single step was extremely difficult to cross. It was even more difficult than cultivating from the early Heavenly Layer 9th stage to the peak of Heavenly Layer 9th stage. Countless 9th star High Lords had been stuck at the peak of Heavenly Layer 9th stage for their entire lives because their destiny was only a 9-star green destiny. Even after hundreds of years, they still weren't able to break through that single step. As for those 9th star High Lords with the king destiny, they were stuck at this single step for far longer than the time it took to cultivate from the early Heavenly Layer 9th stage to the peak of Heavenly Layer 9th stage. From this, it could be seen that Yixing still needed a massive amount of energy to break through to King Realm. Time continued to pass. Yixing's astral stellar within his body had been strengthened to the limit, but it was still constantly fusing with the star force and accumulating strength. He was getting closer and closer to breaking through to King Realm. Yixing's body, because of the nourishment of the true God blood essence, had undergone earth-shaking changes. His vitality surged, as deep as the sea. Chapter 803. Although the true God essence blood's energy was surging, it wasn't truly endless. As Yixing's absorption time grew longer and longer, the true God essence blood became less and less until it finally reached the end. On the 35th day, the last strand of energy light entered Yixing's body. Above his head, there wasn't a single strand of true God essence blood left. It had all been absorbed by Yixing. This last strand of energy light was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It had completely broken through the barrier between the 9th level of Astral Reaching Realm and Star Sea Realm. At this moment, Yixing felt like his inflated body was suddenly empty. A comfortable feeling instantly spread throughout his body. Even his soul seemed to be trembling. King, this is a Star Sea Realm, King? Yixing was overjoyed. Although the energy in his body was surging, his body was like an ocean. He could freely control the surging energy in his body as if it was his arm. Just having a powerful energy in one's body wasn't truly powerful. Being able to freely control this powerful energy and bring out its greatest effect was truly powerful. Right now, Yixing had this feeling of true power. Whoosh! Just as Yixing felt this powerful feeling, a frightening pressure surged from above. Yixing raised his head. High up in the sky, pitch-black clouds were rolling. Lightning snakes wandered within the black clouds, and thunder dragons bobbed up and down. The frightening pressure was transmitted from this black cloud. When a martial artist broke through to the astral reaching realm from the astral reaching realm, they would begin to experience the thunder calamity. From the astral reaching realm to the Star Sea realm, it was a major realm breakthrough. Naturally, one would have to undergo the baptism of the thunder calamity. Moreover, the king body had to undergo the tempering of the thunder calamity to become a king body. Otherwise, no matter how much energy a 9th star venerable lord absorbed, It wouldn't be a king body. This wasn't a difference in quantity, but in quality. The king thunder calamity was the law of heaven and earth. Nothing could stop it. The restrictions of the heavenly Bao continent and the heavenly Bao palace couldn't. Yixing had just broken through to the Star Sea realm when he was immediately separated from the heavenly Bao palace by the law of heaven and earth, appearing in the dimensional space. Looking at the rolling tribulation clouds in the sky, he couldn't help but be startled. When he went through the thunder calamity, the tribulation clouds only covered an area of a few mu. But now, the tribulation clouds covered an area of 100 li. The thunder dragons in the tribulation clouds were a few li long, while the long ones were dozens of li. The pressure coming from the tribulation clouds was extremely terrifying. Yixing was clear about the strength of a one-star king. If it were any other one-star king, they definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the power of the tribulation clouds. His venerable realm lightning tribulation was one level more than ordinary people's. His king realm lightning tribulation seemed to be more terrifying than ordinary people's. Rumble soon. A bolt of tribulation lightning struck down like a huge electric snake. It rushed down from the sky in an instant. How fast lightning, S speed. Lightning TT. TT Tusgodzas. Ye God. S calamity SA8. T. S head. Yixing was right. His king thunder calamity was indeed much more terrifying than an ordinary person's. The power of the first tribulation lightning was at the level of a 3-star king. After all, there were only a few kings who could challenge those of a higher level. Most of the kings were at the normal level. If an ordinary 1-star king encountered a lightning tribulation with the might of a 3-star king, he would probably be fatally injured or even killed instantly. However, compared to Yixing, the tribulation lightning of an ordinary 3-star king was nothing. When Yixing was a 9-star venerable lord, he was already invincible among 3-star kings. When he used all his trump cards, he could even kill a peak 4-star king. Now, Yixing had broken through to the Star Sea realm and become a king. Although he hadn't built his king body, his strength was much stronger than when he was a 9-star venerable lord. A mere 3-star king was nothing in Yixing's eyes. Yixing didn't even use his astrology. Using his body as a bow and his astral energy as an arrow, he pointed a finger at the sky. The astral energy of a king realm cultivator had a qualitative breakthrough compared to an honorable realm cultivator's astral energy. It was more than 10 times stronger. Coupled with the penetrative power of the arrow intent, the destructive power of the astral energy finger had reached a terrifying level. The 1,000-meter-long tribulation lightning was instantly pierced through by the astral energy finger. It shattered and turned into tiny electric currents that scattered in all directions. Many tiny electric currents fell on Yixing's body, but they were directly absorbed by Yixing's body. When a venerable broke through to the king realm, his body would absorb the power of thunder and lightning during the king thunder calamity. Only then would he be able to build his king body. Yixing's flesh and blood had absorbed the energy of a true god's blood essence. In order to refine his king body, he needed far too much power of thunder and lightning. The power of thunder and lightning he absorbed just now wasn't even 1/10 of the required amount. Naturally, it was like a clay ox flowing into the sea, absorbed by Yixing's flesh and blood without causing any fluctuations. It didn't take long for the lightning energy in his body to completely merge with his flesh and blood. Yixing could sense that his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones had changed. Hong long. Not long after, another earth-shaking thunderclap rang out. The second wave of tribulation lightning descended from the sky, instantly striking down. Compared to the first tribulation lightning, this tribulation lightning was more than twice as thick. Its power was also several times stronger. It wasn't inferior to a peak 3-star king's all-out attack. The first tribulation lightning was only at the level of an ordinary 3-star king. The second tribulation lightning was at the level of a peak 3-star king. However, Yixing still ignored the might of a peak 3-star king. Yixing still didn't use his astrology. He only took out his high-grade Xian Bao, Flame Bao, and used Myriad Flames Thunder. The Flame Bao's shadow shot towards the sky. The The second tribulation lightning was instantly dispersed by the flame bow's shadow. It turned into a rain of lightning and fell. Yi Xing absorbed a lot of it into his body, continuing to refine his body. Hong Long. The third tribulation lightning struck, and the sound was even louder. If the second tribulation lightning was only bigger than the first, it was still a lightning snake. The third tribulation lightning had a qualitative change. A right horn grew on the lightning snake, turning it into a lightning dragon. In terms of power, the third tribulation lightning had a qualitative change compared to the second tribulation lightning. It had already reached the level of a 4-star king. Yi Xing sensed it and immediately used his flame astrology. At this moment, the tribulation clouds were in the sky. The flame astrology was an extreme flame astrology, but it couldn't compete with the tribulation clouds. It was pushed to the corner of the sky. Although it was pushed aside, the power of the flame astrology didn't change. Yi Xing's strength increased greatly. Myriad flames thunder. Yi Xing used the same move. He waved his scarlet flame bow, and the flame bow's shadow instantly shattered the void. Even the third tribulation lightning was dispersed. Chapter 804. A large amount of fine lightning bolts fell from the sky, and were absorbed by Yi Xing. The lightning power contained in the third wave of tribulation lightning was of a much higher quality than the previous 2 waves. Absorbing it into his body had a much better effect on tempering his fleshly body. After easily passing the third wave of tribulation lightning, Yi Xing's expression didn't show any joy. Instead, it was somewhat serious. According to convention, the tribulation lightning for venerables was 4 waves, the tribulation for kings was 6 waves, and the tribulation for quasi-gods was 9 waves. However, Yi Xing's lightning tribulation was different from ordinary lightning tribulations. It was a 5-fold tribulation, one more than an ordinary lightning tribulation. Now, Yi Xing's tribulation for kings had a very high starting point. Its power was equivalent to that of a 3-star king. Just the third wave of tribulation lightning was already at the level of a 4-star king. If the rest of the tribulation lightning followed this pattern, the fourth wave of tribulation lightning would have the power of a peak 4-star king. The fifth wave would have the power of a peak 5-star king. The sixth wave would have the power of a peak 5-star king. Peak 5-star king was much stronger than Pang Zhan. Even Yi Xing felt a lot of pressure when breaking through to king. Furthermore, what made Yi Xing feel even more pressured was whether his tribulation of the king realm would be the same as the tribulation of the martial highness realm. If it was, then he would have to face the 7th wave of tribulation lightning. The 7th wave of tribulation lightning was truly terrifying. If it was 1 level higher than the 6th wave, wouldn't it be at the level of a 6-star king? This was what Yi Xing was most worried about. Rumble. Before Yi Xing could think any further, the sound of thunder came from the sky. The 4th wave of tribulation lightning had already struck down. As Yi Xing had expected, the 4th wave of tribulation lightning was already at the level of a peak 4-star king. This was a special tribulation lightning that targeted him. If an ordinary martial artist encountered such a lightning tribulation while breaking through to king, only death would await them. The greater the pressure, the more it aroused Yi Xing's desire to resist. Facing the tribulation lightning in the sky, Yi Xing seemed to have a ball of fire burning in his heart. Kill! Yi Xing roared as he circulated his astral energy to the limit. Darkness, wind, and fire. The 3 grand daos of heaven and earth circulated as he leaped into the sky, facing the tribulation lightning. Yi Xing's speed wasn't slow, but the speed at which the lightning struck was countless times faster than his. When Yi Xing was less than 100 meters above the ground, he collided with the 4th tribulation lightning. Yi Xing's flaming bow shadow exploded the nearly 10-mile-long tribulation thunder. Yi Xing was also struck to the ground by the terrifying power contained in the tribulation thunder. Fortunately, this was a dimensional space. Otherwise, the impact of Yi Xing's landing would have caused a large area to collapse. This time, the tribulation lightning did not scatter very thin. The electric current paths formed were as thick as a finger. The short ones were a few meters, while the long ones were more than 10 meters. When these electric currents fell on Yixing's body, they were also absorbed by his flesh and blood. However, when the electric currents entered his body, Yixing felt as if he was being electrocuted. The power of thunder contained life, but it also contained destruction. Although Yixing's physique was powerful, the electric energy absorbed by his body was too strong. He still felt pain, which meant that his body was injured. If the fourth tribulation lightning was already like this, then it could be foreseen that the next few tribulation lightning would be even more difficult to bear. The pain quickly disappeared. Although Yixing had yet to establish an imperial body, his body had absorbed the energy of a true divinity's blood essence. His life force was surging, and even a small injury was automatically healed in a breath of time. The stronger the power of thunder, although it would cause damage to the body, it also meant that the effect of tempering his flesh and bones would be better. Yixing could feel that the strengthening of his physique had significantly increased. Rumble. The fifth tribulation lightning struck down. Resplendent electric light instantly illuminated the entire dimensional void. A thunder dragon that was as thick as a bucket and dozens of miles long rushed out from the tribulation clouds, instantly smashing down. The first and second tribulation lightning was a thunder snake. The third and fourth tribulation lightning was a thunder flood dragon. The fifth tribulation lightning had evolved into a thunder dragon, and its power had risen to another level. As Yixing expected, the fifth tribulation lightning's power had reached the level of a 5-star king. Whoosh! A beam of starlight shot out from between Yixing's eyebrows. Yixing instantly used the Sagittarius constellation astrological avatar, his strength erupting to the max. The black hole astrological avatar was unable to enhance Yixing's combat strength. It only had a supporting role. When he fought with other martial artists, it was very effective. But facing the attack of the Thunder Tribulation, it was useless. The black hole astrological avatar formed a dark world that simply couldn't affect the Thunder Tribulation. This was because the attacks of the Thunder Tribulation were formed by the rules of the world. Towards Yixing, it wasn't something that could be seen with the naked eye. Rather, it was a lock on the level of the Tao. There was simply no way to avoid it. He could only rely on his formidable strength to directly resist it. The Sagittarius constellation astrological avatar was truly worthy of being called the highest astrological avatar. As the power of the stars fell down, Yixing's power rose. In the blink of an eye, the crimson flame bow shot out an arrow. Just as the arrow left the bow, it collided with the thunder dragon that was falling from the skies. Bang! With a loud explosion, the arrow pierced through the thunder dragon like starlight. After passing through the thunder dragon, it shot another 10 miles into the sky before its power was exhausted, and it vanished without a trace. The thunder dragon that contained the wild power of thunder was pierced through by the arrow. It exploded inch by inch, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into arcs of electricity that drifted down like a rain of lightning. Many of these arcs of lightning fell onto Yixing's body. They were absorbed by his flesh and blood, causing him to feel an intense stabbing pain. The power of these arcs of lightning was much more destructive to his body than the fourth stage of tribulation lightning. After a full 5 breaths of time, the stabbing pain finally disappeared. The surging life force in his flesh and blood healed the damage. This was only the 5th stage of tribulation lightning. There was still the even stronger 6th stage, and the even more terrifying 7th stage. Yixing's expression was solemn and firm. He looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky with vigilance. The attacks of the tribulation lightning would become stronger and faster as it went on. It was already difficult to judge the attacks of the tribulation lightning just by the sound. One had to look at it with their eyes to be able to react immediately. Not long after, the 6th stage of tribulation lightning descended. Another 10-mile-long thunder dragon rushed out from the tribulation clouds. Now the lightning instantly lit up the entire sky. This thunder dragon was even stronger than the 5th stage of tribulation lightning. Its power was even more terrifying, reaching the level of a peak 5-star king. Yixing was already prepared. The moment the thunder dragon appeared, he had already locked onto it. He had already pulled back the crimson flame bow, and a black flame arrow shot out. This was Yixing's most powerful arrow. The black flame arrow instantly soared into the sky and collided with the thunder dragon. Bang! The two forces collided and instantly exploded. Resplendent electric light bloomed and shot out in all directions. The power of this arrow was too terrifying. More than half of the thunder dragon was instantly blown apart. However, the sixth stage of tribulation lightning was also extremely powerful. Before the black flame arrow could completely penetrate it, its power was exhausted. The thunder dragon that was still several miles long continued to fall. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.